consumer employees, this is a cheaper option, it's going to potentially do the same thing, and then this more expensive. Sometimes the doctor might prescribe something more expensive, and that's when the patient needs to say, okay, hold on a second, is there anything that's cheaper that might be doing the same thing?
And again, I think we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I think, since we're kind of down this rabbit hole, it almost seems like I agree that you are messing with people's health if you say, hey, this is working, you're stable, all of a sudden you're yanking them off of this to go try a cheaper alternative. Let's see what happens. Versus, do we consider doing that for future cases?
Correct.
That now you've got a new case, and we're at least going to go down this path of, hey, give this a month and see how your outcome is.
Correct.
And, the STEP program isn't long, we're not requiring people to do it for a long period of time, but maybe, hey, just because your doctor's in love with blank, there's thousands of other doctors that are in love with this lower alternative too.
Yep.
And that decision right there could be hundreds of thousands to our plan.
But
Right.
correct me if I'm wrong, we could not implement step therapy without disruption to the people that are already.
Correct.
So that was part of our discussion last year, is that the cost savings to disrupt 10 people was not worth the value of.
No, I thought I got
putting it in.
I thought I got a head shake over we could do it for future cases.
So the grandfathering was the issue with a carved out your Optum RX pharmacy plan. They were giving us issues of actually grandfathering those employees that are currently on some of those high cost drugs that would have to revert back. So that was the issue with the step therapy that we discussed last year too. Just, it would be a lot of disruption for people who are actively taking something that's a higher cost and taking them off of that drug.
But I don't disagree with you, Dave. I think if we could move forward with new cases, that might be a great option. But to disrupt current people.
Yeah, I don't think the board has a
Right.
desire to do that.
Right.
So that's the question.
Correct, yep.
Can we, and who's saying we can't do that?
So typically, all of the different pharmacy contracts are different across the board. So Optum Rx has a partnership with United Healthcare. They can be carved in with United Healthcare and there's integration, or you can be carved out. You are currently carved out with United Healthcare, which ultimately gives you a better contract with Optum Rx when we go out to bid and making sure you have that strong contract. But being carved out, they do have some barriers, and one of those being is grandfathering the current cases that are taking a drug that would have to go back to
But we're about to renew with them, right?
You will renew with them in 2023. So you're on a different contract period on your pharmacy compared to medical.
So if that's what they're saying, then this point is moot because we're under contract.
Correct.
And we can't necessarily break it unless we say this is important to your client. At renewal, we're going to remember this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something we certainly can negotiate at time of renewal, because you will be up for, we'll go to the market and see what other pharmacy contracts are out there. Some pharmacy contracts might allow you to grandfather, and if that's the case, that's where we leverage with those and see how we can negotiate with Optum to make that happen. And today, for the pharmacy strategies we have brought to you as potential options are changing the formulary, so actually the prescription drug list, and then it's a vigilant drug program, which basically will start excluding clinical duplicates, so some that actually do the exact same thing, non-FDA approved drugs, and then there's a couple others, and that's a few slides down that we can talk about now, or if you want me to go through the next part of the renewal, it's up to you guys. I know
Well,
time
obviously,
is-
the next part of the renewal is probably pretty boring, right? I mean, there's no.
Well,
real
the stop
juice there.
loss, if you want to.
Okay, yeah. Tell me about my favorite subject, stop loss.
Okay, just one quick thing on administration. I'll take 2 seconds. You were up for renewal for United Healthcare, so we did go to the market, making sure that we got the most aggressive rates from the medical carriers. And so when we did that, for some customer service issues we've been having with United Healthcare, we brought that to their attention, and we also, some of the competitive data we leveraged. So Haran was able to negotiate that down to about a 17.5% decrease, which is about a little over $100,000 in value. That's for the next 2 years. The third year, it'll increase by 3%. We also were able to increase the wellness funds from $20,000 to $45,000, which is great. Tammy and Kim have done a lot to make sure that the wellness program is robust with the Weight Watchers and some of the other wellness programming, so that fund will come in handy. And then performance guarantees are increased as well year over year. So we'll go into stop loss. This is just telling you what the initial renewal was. That was a 9.3% increase, which equates to $31,000. We did receive some competitive data from the market. We typically take this out and nobody wants to bid it. I'm going to swing through some of these slides for you. So we requested quotes from 11 different carriers. We did receive a few. Some of them wanted to change your specific deductible, wanted to make some changes, but overall, using some of that competitive data and then what we were able to negotiate, we reduced that renewal $23,000 down to a 2.5% increase, which equates to $8,000. So, the stop loss history here. This is what we talked about a little bit earlier. Just so you can see, this will be our 4th year with the aggregating specific deductible. And through those 4 years, we have been able to save over $1 million in fixed cost or stop loss premium due to having that aggregating specific. You have had no reimbursements since adding that aggregating specific. This year alone, you did have a high claimant that hit over $250,000. However, because you have that aggregating specific, the remainder of those funds goes towards that aggregating specific deductible, and you still have not hit it year to date. It's been a larger year. It's been about $197,000 of your aggregating specific has been accumulated, but we do not foresee you hitting that hopefully by the end of the year.
But we're saving $300,000 or $400,000 a year.
Yeah, so if you look at the premiums in previous years, the total stop loss premium, you can see that ranged anywhere from, $300,000 to $650,000, almost up to $700,000.
$700,000 to $400,000 is pretty much our range.
So it's been much less overall, and in 2022, it'll just be increasing $8,000 from where it is today.
Right. Although, again, when they keep jerking us around, that's when I say we've paid $4.6 million in premium. I'd much rather encumber that amount, leave it in our own account, and be our own carrier. But I understand it's
They are
public funds
willing. They are willing to renew it at a flat premium if you did increase your specific deductible to $275,000.
Why are they doing this when we've had no losses for 4 years?
So stop loss trend is a funky thing because it is a pooled program or product.
I'm going to start a stop loss company. I mean, this is just, seriously,
Do
this
you
is
get mad
pathetic.
when your car insurance goes up and you have no claims?
Tiffany, you're supposed to be my advocate here.
I am.
No, and typically it does go down.
It's
I mean, it
about-
depends on the rest of the pool and everything else.
Yeah.
I understand, but this is ridiculous.
Something that chart doesn't show is 2012. Tiff will remember it well. We made some drastic changes for 2012, but that premium, we were looking at lasers on a couple of individuals and that premium at over $1 million. So it was the number.
I think
so-
it was $1.1 million.
Yep. So we were able to, or the board was able to, and our carriers to find a better fit for us.
I think it's
and
been a
get
great
creative.
strategy. I think the aggregate's been a great strategy. I think it's paid off for us, and it is a balance when you're talking about the unknowns of the healthcare world.
I understand, and it's public dollars, so we have to be a little cognizant of that. But yeah, I mean, the strategy's worked. My colleagues have always reined me in to say, wait a second, we can't go full board with this and just act like it's our own money. And even though we have saved, obviously, millions by this strategy over the years, and it has worked, I just get so frustrated when I see these are the real numbers, and our plan, the way we're mitigating and processing claims and working with you guys and United Healthcare has worked. And yet, these handful of stop-loss carriers just do not recognize the market, and they don't care because they think they can. Just it's almost collusion that they're all saying, well, we're just going to raise the groups 8 to 10% every year, no matter what their actual claims are, their actual loss ratios. They're just doing it because they
Right.
can.
Yes, it's very hard to get a flat renewal for stop loss just because of the other groups that are in that stop loss pool. There could be another group with Tokyo Marine that's, having a catastrophic year. And so being that pooled product, that's what causes some of those increases, just like, a car insurance or something like that.
Sure,
But
which is
it's-
why keep
Yeah.
pointing to, I would be okay being our own insurance company
Right.
and putting that 4.6 million into a pool, that is our stop loss
Mm-hmm.
insurance, which is, if we would have done that, we had 4.6 million in that pool right now
Right.
to be covering these losses.
Mm-hmm.
But again,
I
can't
love
necessarily
that you're
do-
militant on this,
I know.
Dave. I mean, but seriously, like, these are the sorts of strategies that I think really matter as an employer and in an insurance company, because we aren't supplanting our judgment for the judgment of doctors in the offices with our employees. And so, I appreciate pushing on all of these kinds of appropriate insurance levers to be able to control costs. We aren't trying to be the doctor in this. We're just trying to insure for potential risk. And so I appreciate your continued advocacy around this strategy, because it makes complete sense.
Which one of the things, again, not about me, but this is one of the things, Tiffany, if you remember, this I'm most proud of when people talk about why is Warren County in such great financial shape. We started doing this 15 years ago, where, it was just kind of, it is what it is, right, Tammy? These are the healthcare programs, and it's like, wait, we can become the healthcare carrier, we can take this on, look at our actual loss runs, and we totally redid the way we did insurance, and Haran has been a good partner through much of that process, so we appreciate that. But again, it's millions, correct? In savings that we've had. Steve, would you say it's millions?
Yeah, when we look at the trend, if you ran a regular trend compared to what you're doing to manage the plan, I think cumulative over the 10 years, it was like, I don't know if it was 14 or $16 million. So based on-
16.7.
16 million, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's almost $17 million that, yeah, it's real money.
The board has definitely been forward-thinking to the status quo, so,
Yeah, when you made plan changes, we were kind of the first to the market in making those plan changes. Surrounding counties are just now, I think, finally catching up to what we've been doing for years.
high deductible
High deductible
plans
healthcare
as an
plans, our
example.
wellness plan.
Oh, yeah.
Discouraging employees to go to the ER unless you're actually admitted, we didn't want you to go to
Correct.
the ER for the sniffles,
Yeah.
and if you did that, then you're gonna pay for it. So those were kind of those common sense things we did way back when.
Correct. And even looking at your benchmarking data, one of the big things is your premiums. Your premiums are just so great compared to the market and what your employees pay. And the fact that they have an option for a no-cost plan, that's pretty much unheard of these days. So it's been a great strategic partnership. All right, so we can breeze through some of these. These are some of the RX strategies, and I know we've had some conversation on this as well. This is the first one. It's basically switching the the formulary to the premium formulary. Right now, it's an open formulary, so that means that pretty much any drug is covered on the pharmacy drug list. So from a generic and brand, it's very open. The premium formulary is a little bit more narrow for Optum Rx, and essentially it's going to exclude some of those clinical duplicates, some drugs that you could potentially even get over the
It
counter.
only saves 84,000 by switching? Then I'd say no.
Okay.
Keep going.
The next one is about $58,000 in plan savings. So this is the Vigilant Drug Program. So it will exclude some specific drugs. It's not going to be as narrow as a premium formulary, so it's not a formulary change. Essentially what this is say a drug, there's a generic equivalent. So Lipitor, for example. It's a brand drug, but there's a generic equivalent. An employee would be switched to the generic equivalent.
But this goes against Commissioner Jones's point of it's a
Correct.
mandatory switch to save 58 grand.
Yeah, I'm less concerned about a switch to a bioequivalent for which there is a generic, alternative. Where I'm more worked up about is on those things for which the view is there is an alternative drug that may do the same types of things. And so, you know, if our utilization of generics is down or trending down, I don't know, you know, how much better can you really be than 90%? I mean, I'm sure there's a number, I don't know what that is. And if the, you know, juice is worth the squeeze in upsetting folks, but, you know, it is true, there are some bioequivalent generics for Lipitor. And so I, you know, that's less my issue than those other name brand drugs.
But is it, again, I'm no
Totally
expert in
fair.
this, but
Totally fair.
there's bioequivalents, which are generics, correct? But then the way I read this is equivalent drugs, which means you're on a branded drug and there's an alternative drug that might have a generic alternative. Is
Yep.
that correct? When
So-
it says alternative, doesn't mean that drug had, or are you saying it is clearly a generic?
There are both. So there's some, the clinical duplicates, for example, that would be specifically, it's the same thing. So that's actually where the bulk of the savings is coming from that. It's about $42,000. So that would be, it's the exact same drug, something else
Maybe
is.
there's a better way to encourage the use of bioequivalent drugs with, you know, a different strategy on a copay or
Copay,
something.
we could jack up the copay, right?
And another thing I will say about some of these pharmacy strategies, your Optum contract is up for renewal in 2023. So every year when we do this, we do get some savings, whether it's from those rebates or whether it's from the pharmacy contract as a whole. So the discounts from the average wholesale pricing, those are all things we look under the hood and make sure we're getting the most competitive contract. So some of these strategies, you know, like you said, it's at $84,000, $50-something thousand. Typically, we get much greater savings when we negotiate the contract. If we come back next year, have some potential options, maybe some grandfathering, plus just even more competitive contracts, that could be additional
Yeah,
savings
but
in
I think to
2023.
Commissioner Grossman's point that on the generic side, that we can, you know, it's the carrot and the stick, right? That it's
Yep.
a little bit of a stick that, wait, if you want to use your branded drug and there is an absolute generic equivalent to that drug, we want you to use the generic, that's in the plan's best interest. And if you don't want to do that, it's not a $20 difference, it could be a $100 difference.
Right, right. And there is a copay differential right now, and I think that that could be something we maybe stretch and make it a little bit greater in combination with that and just communication and education to the employees. And we do a good job of making sure that employees are educated, what drug they need to go on, but something a little bit more robust could potentially help with that too.
I'm curious, what's the theory of us paying for the higher cost branded drug, regardless of this copay difference? But why would we want to spend more for a drug that is brand name, that no longer has protection as a monopoly? So they go into the generics, and now you've got the drug that's identical. I mean, identical.
Right.
And the only difference is that the brand company knows, and he's making a generic too now, because he understands this. So he wants to go in competition with the generic people that are competing with his brand, but he also knows that there's, I'm not gonna call them stupid, but they don't know what they're doing. And they're going off and they're buying the higher priced brand drug because they think it's better than an absolutely, completely identical drug. So why are we gonna pay for the brand? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
And why would we go along with this? Okay, we're gonna encourage you to use the lower priced generic drug as opposed to the brand drug by the deductible, or not deductible, by the copay. As opposed to simply saying, if you wanna do the brand, it's all on you. We'll pay for the identical thing
Yep,
at a lower cost. I mean, I prefer to do it that way,
right.
but, okay, whatever my colleagues want, but I don't understand why we would
Yeah,
ever.
but when the branded drug is competing with the generic, they're relatively the same price. What happens is the branded manufacturer changes something in the branded drug. So they may add something to it. They may change the formulation so it's no longer bioequivalent. you know, that's their marketing strategy. I mean, to the extent that they are competing among generics, the prices are are relatively the same. That disparity doesn't really exist any longer. It's that there's always these new drugs coming on the market that is the factor. It's not Lipitor's no longer an exclusive drug. The generic that they're manufacturing is the same as any other manufacturers.
Well, I thought that actually, and you maybe have more expertise than I do on this, but I thought that the brand people who had the brand, who always had a monopoly for a period of time, do charge more than the generic drug, because they actually go into the generic market. And the brand people, I mean, Prasco.
Yeah, I was gonna
is
say, that's what Prasco does.
Yeah, exactly. And so what they do is, the brand people go into the generic market. So they actually market a generic drug at a lower cost than the brand when it's identical, because they still know that people will buy their brand because people think it's better than the generic. And so literally, the same company is selling a generic, and he's selling a brand. And he's paying, and it isn't that they're the same cost. If it was the same, it wouldn't make any difference to him. It's that he charges more for the brand name, because there's value. There is a goodwill to his name.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, brand drugs typically, for example, like a Humira, if they get a patent for helping and treating some specific diagnosis, and they keep that patent for how many years, they can find another way that Humira could treat another diagnosis. So maybe there's a generic for Humira for one diagnosis, but then this other diagnosis, you have to be on the brand drug of Humira for that.
Yeah, because I think it's like 17 years patent protection, but then when you start monkeying around with the actual formula, then you have to go through
Exactly.
the whole FDA approval process to do it. I think it is the utilizations that, that it's approved for this, and now we're saying it's for this, and that's not necessarily
Yeah.
subject to the same
Yeah.
protections. But anyway, all we're talking about is, we're trying to encourage, whatever strategy to try to encourage more generic utilizations. Apparently, it's not that big of a deal out of our population, but whatever we can do from the incentive standpoint, that to make that discrepancy between generic and branded even greater, that we're trying to make our employees consumers even more, even though they're doing a great job of doing it, they're partners with that in this, that maybe we encourage them a little bit more.
Correct. Yep. And your generic utilization is definitely better than the norm where it is right now.
But it's
So-
trending down a little bit.
So that's something that's continue to monitor, and then potentially with the new pharmacy contract in 2023, what we can do to
So
help with
you're not
that.
recommending we do that for 2022?
I think it's programs like this that help drive that type of utilization, right? Because we're taking off clinical duplicates and trying to drive to those lower cost ones. So programs like this, I'd also just say, Optum evaluates their formulary twice a year, and they'll put different drugs in different tiers to try to drive more generic utilization. So we do obviously partner with them and rely on them to help drive that, because Commissioner Grossman's point, if there's a brand drug, they have exclusivity forever, then they have exclusivity on the generic of that brand drug, and they still charge an astronomical amount. And it's not until other manufacturers can come in with generics where you see that price drop. So it's kind of crazy. That's, to your point, we didn't create it. It's the system that we have.
A lot of times it's the first to market, which is Prasco's business model. They go into the branded manufacturer and say, let us off-market this, and you're still manufacturing it. It's just, we're digging into the same batch of pills. Some of them are gonna be branded, some of them are gonna go over here under this other label and be generic. And they make gobs of
It's
money
another
doing that.
12 months to where they can do that until other people can make that generic. So that's part of it. But when those other generics do come to market, that's why Optum looks at it twice a year to say, all right, this is now here. We're going to take this brand drug and we're going to go from tier 2 to tier 3 to help drive utilization to that tier 1 lower cost drug. So we do work with them to help try to obviously take that formulary and change it. I think every year do take Optum's recommendations on their adjusted formularies. And that's part of it, as when they come to the market, they'll try to help drive that.
It's just they
utilization.
always cast that swath too broadly. I mean, I understand, but that's what I, object to.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a balance, it's a balance of people obviously need drugs. The other thing, when you say like, well, let's just increase the brand, you know, copay, one, you're on high deductible, so they pay the true price of the drug for a long time until it hits the copays. But you also have to keep in mind, there are people that need the brand, and there aren't generic equivalents all the time. So if you just say, hey, let's bump up the copay, well, there's folks out there that actually do need that brand, they can't get anything because there is no generic equivalent, or, you know, that generic equivalent just didn't work for them, so you're kind of hitting those folks too, so.
Well, and you can't have a category when a generic is available, you pay a different copay?
A lot of them for that program, Allison? Or
They-
they're like,
I think that,
see.
well, let me check on that one. I will say, you know, if there's a reason, medical necessity wise, that person needs to stay on a brand drug, they can.
Fair enough, but if
Just
they're just
actually
making a choice that,
paying.
yes, I know there's a generic, and yes, I know there's a brand, but I've been on the brand for however long, I don't care that it's bioequivalent, I want to continue on this brand, then they should really pay more for that.
Right, right,
Okay.
okay. So, moving into health management, if we can go over this quickly, this is just offering, recommendation to offer Weight Watchers Reimagine to the dependents, so it'd be anybody over the age of 18. This would add an additional cost of $7,500 annually. What we've seen from Weight Watchers Reimagine is a
For
good
$7,500,
success.
I'd say yes.
Yep.
Keep going.
All right. And you got more wellness funds too, so. The other thing is mid-year biometric screening. So right now you're doing mid-year off-sites. If we want to increase engagement, we can do that on-sites for a larger, robust panel. It would charge $75 a screening instead of $35 a screening.
Our current off-site, so we had those in July, the participation was about 50 people went for the mid-year. So I do think if it was brought on site, we would have better participation for that.
Well, again, it's just a strategy of we're trying to get people identified sooner if they're actually problematic,
Well,
because
and
that saves us money.
And the the mid-year panel allows those who've been identified with some sort of issue, so say it's high cholesterol, they can be working with their doctor to bring that cholesterol down, and then they can check it. And so, you know, I think there's value in that to keep encouraging
That's a good point. So
folks.
Tammy, you like that idea?
I do like it, and.
Okay, let's go.
All right. One other medical potential strategy is offering iatrogenic, I hope I said that right, infertility coverage. So this is for somebody who potentially had radiation or chemotherapy, cancer-related, something that has now caused infertility. United Healthcare is now adding this coverage to their fully insured block of business. So essentially it's services to help people for preservation of, sperm and just making sure people are able to have children later on post-chemotherapy. So this is something that we can offer. It would be effective now. They wanted an answer back in September-ish for January 1, but we can add in February. So this could be added in February 1st. The only thing I asked, is there a potential cost estimate to add something like this? There is a benefit lifetime limit of $20,000 per member. So I'm not sure how many people would actually utilize this coverage, but there is a max to how much money, because these services can get expensive.
I wouldn't have a problem with it.
And if we do offer it, we can also offer it on the pharmacy side too. It's a $5,000 maximum on pharmacy. Okay. We can breeze through this, just continuing to educate people about the Christ Hospital program. So we'll continue to do that.
We would like to have a program with Mercy Health. Mercy is making a huge investment in Warren County. They're building a hospital. You know, I would specifically like to reach out. I actually talked to their CEO about why in the world are we doing a deal with Christ, and you guys are a major player here too. So, and he's like, of course we want your business, of course we,
Yeah.
so again, they're making a major investment in Warren County, so I'd like to try to make sure they're a
Yeah.
preferred provider of whatever they can do.
Yeah, we can certainly look into that. Christ Hospital, just from a quality and the cost standard, they have a very high standard with both of those. And so United Healthcare has a partnership. It's one of their centers of excellence. Typically, you pay an admin fee to be a part of this program with them. They waived your admin fee, United Healthcare, so it's like a win-win. You have this partnership, but you're not paying for it, just to make sure people get somewhere where it's lower cost, high quality. But we can certainly look at Mercy's metrics as well and see if that would be a good partnership. Certainly. All right, so employee contributions. This is if we were to keep the same percent as they pay today on the buy-up plan. So you can see at the left hand, you can see the current cost, base obviously being nothing. Buy-up, you have the employee or the single rate and then the family. If you move over to the right column, you can see the increase there. It's about a $6 change for single and then about a $17 change monthly for family.
And that share is 85% employer paid, 15% employee paid.
Correct. What we know is that these contributions are still well below where we're seeing, benchmark costs. And I have a slide on that too, so you can see where your contributions compare. They're very rich compared to benchmark.
So what's our family, if you're in kind of the normal plan, what's our family rate
It's 200 a month, or almost 200 a month.
for the whole family?
Correct.
For
106 month?
the buy-up plan, the premium plan where the employees share the premium, you have the base plan. That's the premium-free plan.
I know, but like most employees, I would take it are not.
It's about 50-50.
Okay, so it's either you're basically self-insuring up to your deductible limit yourself with no premium, or you're paying a premium and you're getting,
Lower deductible.
right, and what is that premium? 216?
For a family, it's going up to about $200 a month. It's about $98 a pay.
Yeah, so 200 a month.
Which, again, I think we should be jumping up and down, showing how out of the world this is, right, Mr. Campbell, for private market health insurance is $1,200 to $1,800 a month, and our folks are paying $2,000 a month, yes.
Yes. So this is the benchmark slide showing you, what the average cost is nationally, regionally, in your industry, so public sector. As you can see in all those different categories for both single and family, where you all stand, specifically family, your contributions
And-
well below benchmark.
And you say there was only one health plan that reported, so those are only one health plan that you're recognizing as far as those numbers?
So the number of health plans, so 1 and 1 is just your Warren County
Okay,
plan.
gotcha.
And then as you move along, that will show you how many have been
Gotcha.
reported in those areas. Yep.
If we look at statewide counties, this is from our SERB required response, and this is 2020, for high deductible plans like ours, the cost, the monthly cost was $1,839. The employer picked up $1,594 of that, and the employees paid $244 of that, opposed to our buy-up, which is $1,262.
Which is literally the polar opposite of the private sector, where if it's $1,800, what a lot of employers are even being generous, they'll pay 100% of single, right? So they pay the 100% of single a lot of times, and so if the single's $300 and it's $1,800, that means your family out-of-pocket cost is $1,500 a month, literally.
So
And so in our world, so I mean, the employees are, I think we just have to impress that, and I know we do a decent job of doing that, you're gonna go make 50 cents more an hour out in the private sector or whatever. Well, your net take-home is probably gonna be less.
correct. Correct. Yep, and then to that point, Commissioner Young, just talking about future options and strategies, as we continue to look at spousal spend, that is something that we could potentially have conversations on. Not necessarily even, increasing rates for spouses out of control for the buy-up, but maybe just breaking it up into a 4-tier strategy. So it's, employee plus spouse, employee plus child, children, and then family, where we can, range those contributions a little differently, putting a little bit more weight on the spouse, maybe not as much for employee and children, because children are typically healthy risk on the plan. seeing if we can divvy that out. Not recommending for next year. I think that this is a continued conversation and strategy we talk about.
Okay.
All right, so dental, this is the only other thing that was up for renewal. So, or because of how the service has been with Dental Care Plus, I know that there's been providers leaving, some service issues. We did want to take that out to the market. As far as your overall cost for dental, I mean, it's running very well. It's running less, projected less in 2022. We recommend keeping your rates the same.
Oh, well, so are you getting bids from other people to do this?
We did, yes. Yes, we
Have you
did.
recommended somebody?
We did receive a lot of different quotes from the market, Delta Dental, Superior Dental Care, Emeritus, United Healthcare, for example. What we did find in the market is you are self-funded, so you just pay the administrative fee and then you pay the claims. So you don't pay like that fully insured premium that a lot of dental carriers will offer, other employers will offer. The big thing about moving to a different dental carrier, I know that there's been disruption with Dental Care Plus, but there would be even more significant disruption if we were to move to one of those other carriers.
Well, so how do we deal with the fact that there are a whole bunch of, there's some hospitals and there's dentists and a whole bunch of people, they won't accept Dental Care Plus because they can't work with them. And apparently Dental Care Plus's office is really skeleton now, and they don't respond to claims and stuff. So what is the disruption that is potentially happening? Because I guess you can't measure this because you don't have any idea how many people have dentists or go to groups that now are refusing to use Dental Care Plus.
So we've been tracking those at Horan to see who's coming out of the network, but just give you a frame of reference. For example, if we were to move to, say, a Superior Dental Care, they were the one that matched the network as great as we could find somebody. Their percentage of dentists who are in network compared to Dental Care Plus's network was 79%, meaning only 79% of the dentists are in network with Superior compared to Dental Care Plus. So I know there's been some people leaving the network, but overall, there would be that significant disruption moving elsewhere.
So when you're telling me that there are people leaving the network, how up to date is your figures on that? Because this has been happening, I guess, really recently.
Yeah, so I would say that we get, and Steve, you might be alluded to this too, how many dentists we see leaving the network here and there. I would say I got a letter yesterday that a dentist was leaving. We got one from the Warren County team the week before. So this is something that Dental Care
And
Plus.
I think some hospitals who do dental stuff are leaving. Like, is Christ Hospital leaving it too? I mean, there's some major hospital groups who are leaving Dental Care Plus.
And I know.
In the hospitals, there's obviously been but a decent amount of providers have been exiting, and probably right now, if you look at a disruption, if like Superior's at 79%, the dentists that have left and that we know are leaving, it's about a 91%, so about 9%.
So how do we handle somebody where we provide, so I don't completely understand how this works. So since we pay the claims, and yet the dentists are actually in these, are part of this like Dental Care Plus, and they are so upset with Dental Care Plus because they don't respond, they don't answer their you got to provide coverage here. They're not getting back to them, and I don't completely understand that why they're leaving, but it's been in the press that there's people leaving Dental Care Plus. So what is it? Why is it that we, since we're paying it, why do we partner with somebody like Dental Care Plus or healthcare does or whatever? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so I would say, there's definitely been some changes they were acquired by DentaQuest most recently. DentaQuest is a company that is based out of more the New England area. They work more in the Medicare, Medicaid industry. So, the consumer of just these traditional plans, they're not as accustomed as a local Dental Care Plus group, specifically locally. And so some of the contract changes that are happening, prior authorizations, there's some changes to the contract because of that acquisition. So I think the combination of that has obviously caused frustration to the employees, but then also to those dentists where they're changing different ways that they process claims, and it's been an issue. Right now, what you all have in place is you have an HMO plan and an indemnity plan. So in the HMO plan, you might have a good benefit, however, there's no out-of-network coverage. So to your point, if somebody's in an HMO plan and they get a letter from their dentist that they're not working with Dental Care Plus anymore, they can't use them. They can't use their insurance. So what we've been doing is looking at different alternatives to make sure we still have a robust network or the most robust network out there, which we've been looking at replacement plans. In this case, we recommend doing a full PPO replacement plan. So this would replace your HMO and your indemnity plan, but it provides out-of-network coverage. So your indemnity plan did have out-of-network coverage, but for those in the HMO, like I said, they did not have that. So if we replaced it with a PPO, everybody would be on this plan. It's a reduced ASO fee of about 15 cents per employee per month, but they're able to match the current plan design. And with that out-of-network coverage, it would be at a match level, meaning that it would be the same cost for in-network as long as that provider abides and takes that amount. So there is a chance that an employee could be balance billed for the difference of the cost. So that is something we want to monitor, but we want to make sure that they have coverage out of network if they need to go out of network and want to stay with their dentist.
Okay, so let me see if I understand what you just said. So, I know, because I'm kind of dense today. No, okay. So in other words, you're recommending that we allow our people to go to this PPO, and in effect, if the dentist isn't even within Dental Care Plus, they can still get coverage.
Correct.
That's what you're telling me.
So typically, excuse me,
And
without,
he's shaking his head, yes, so I'm assuming that we're okay.
yes.
But
Yes.
but they may be balance billed, so
Right,
there's a
okay.
negotiated rate that Dental Care Plus pays the dentist $60 for cleaning, let's say. And if your dentist charges $80, they're gonna say, well, you owe us $20.
Correct.
So as long as that's really transparent and patients understand that there is,
Still a network,
Yeah, it's-
basically, that's agreed to pricing.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you have the free market choice to go out of this network, and anybody in our network has agreed to X pricing. You can still go to your person, but they're not agreeing to that price anymore, and you're gonna be billed the difference.
And on
Is that the way it
Yes.
works?
Yeah, and on
exactly.
David's theory, 15 cents per person a month, I mean, that's not worth talking about, so we're okay with that, right, Dave?
It would be less too,
Must be a
less
reduction.
cost, yep, it's a reduction.
In administration.
next.
And employees are used to, they're used to the out-of-network and the potential to balance bill if they use an out-of-network dentist, so.
Correct.
And they're used to it on the medical plan also.
For UHC.
That they have that, there is that risk.
Yep. And we also had them put performance guarantees in place too, just with some of the service issues that we've been receiving. So those are on here as well, and we'll continue to monitor to make sure that they continue to be a good partner and see what we can do about some of the network changes. All right, so health savings account, that's another thing we went out to bid. There was no, contract changes or anything expiring, but we did want to see just due diligence, what's out there. Right now with First National, you do not pay anything. So there's no admin fee, there's no cost, setup fee, anything like that. As you can see, the options we provided here, there are administration fees for some of these banks. The only bank that does not offer any charges is HSA Bank. The biggest thing I would say is if we were to move it to a different HSA bank, there are going to be a lot of disruption and potentially angry employees because there is typically a blackout period where they cannot utilize their funds when it's being transferred. If people stay with First National, they'll probably have to pay an individual fee to keep that maintained since it's not with the group anymore. One thing we did notice, if there are any service issues, Haran is currently not the broker of record. There's no broker of record on it. So once we add ourselves, just to make sure that if there are any issues coming on, we can escalate that with leadership as well and make sure that there's no hiccups going forward. So that would be our recommendation, is just to make sure we continue to be transparent with them and make sure there's no service issues.
Just seems like there's not a lot of technology there.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. You have, account balances and all that.
They don't send you any reports or anything,
They
like
do
statements?
at the beginning of every month. It's just the technology is just not great. But, I
Yeah.
mean,
I will say banks, so for example, Fifth Third just got out of the HSA business altogether, because at the end of the day, that's not where they're making their money. So the service or, customer service, that's not their high point as HSAs, is what we've realized for some of these banks. So, things like statements, though, that should be something that they are providing you, and we can definitely escalate that to see if we can get that recurring.
I think they come, like you said,
The first
Shannon,
of the
first of the
month,
month,
they do.
they're emailed,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, it's just, that, so we do get that at the first of the month.
First
We
of the
get an
month.
email and you enter your password in and you can.
I should probably know my password. That's probably part of my problem.
It's the last 4 digits of your social
Yeah.
security number.
But you can go online, you can go online
That's
to their
what's-
baking,
yeah,
yeah. And they
that's-
do have an app, I do believe, that you can view it on your phone as well.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
All right, so nothing changing with vision, recommend same rates, we're in a rate guarantee with that and IMED. Other benefit renewals, there's no rate change, we did some changes with Minnesota Life last year, FSA is saying no rate change, and then the same thing with your employee assistance program. Other than that, that's all we have for you today. Any questions?
I hope we've gone through those all already.
We have.
All righty,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending so much time with us.
Yeah, sorry for our scheduling issues here, that we're obviously a little behind. Michelle, how long are these public hearings gonna take? Are these just,
My first one shouldn't take long, I'm not for sure about the second one, but
There's only 3 people in the room that could be here for those 2 items. Everyone else is here for the different
right, so, but I was thinking from a public hearing standpoint,
Make a call, and if there's no one here that wants to testify in opposition, then
yeah, anybody here want to speak to the rezoning applications on the public hearing for Franklin Township or Harlan
This is
Township?
an opposition.
Harlan Township.
Okay,
That's number 5.
At 10:15.
right.
are you in opposition to what's being proposed?
Okay.
So we'll move to the next one testimony.
So, yeah, let's go, so we're just gonna delay our work session here for a little bit, we're gonna run through, sorry. We've got public hearings on this, we're gonna open a public hearing for the rezoning application initiated by RZC to rezone 36 acres in Franklin Township from light industrial to single family, 2-acre density.
Good morning, Michelle Tagmeyer, Warren County Building and Zoning. This is a map amendment. It is case 2021-06. Just a little history. The reason we found out about this particular case, and Mr. Hauser is here this morning, he asked for an appraisal on his property and found out that he was in an industrial versus residential. He could not get a loan. So we took that before the RZC, and the RZC decided they would take that up. So the RZC initiated this in July. RPC heard the case in August. The Rural Zoning Commission then again heard it in September, and now we are before you for a final approval. It is prior to the 2012, and as everyone knows, 2012, we did a zoning amendment and a map amendment. So prior to
You really
20
don't have to go all through the whole thing, so he was
Okay.
changed over to commercial.
Yes, sir.
And he doesn't want to be commercial.
That's true, sir. So I can, yeah, and I can just show you. That's what it is currently, and this is the current structures that are there. Again, that's the big picture. There's residential
Mr.
everywhere.
Hauser is here?
Yes, he is.
Okay, very good.
And he wants to change so that his usage is consistent with his usage.
Actually, he and all the neighbors that are in the industrial want to be changed to residential, and I do have signed papers from each of those persons in that pink area wanting to go back to residential.
And they're all residential
Yeah,
people.
they all want, yeah, they're all residential. It's all single-family homes.
Okay, so, and the underlying determinations have been to recommend that we allow that, correct?
Yes.
because this is, and nobody's opposing that, right?
Nobody's opposing that, sir.
All right, I think this is an easy one, David.
Correct. So you understand a lot of people like commercial because, might increase your value of your property, but you live there, you don't care, you want to keep
Every
it.
one of the homeowners in that property would like our homes to be in a residential zone.
Fair enough. Public hearing, anybody else want to speak on this matter? Okay, come on up.
I live across.
Just your name and address, sir.
Michael Johnson, 5906 State Route 123,
Okay?
which is across the street from this proposal. One of the considerations that I have is they need to reduce the speed limit through that area. We have a ditch line in front of our house, and we've lived there almost 10 years, and there's been 4 cars in that ditch line. The state won't do nothing to fix it, for one thing. If this goes to residential, it's going to be more traffic on that road, which is, we have a lot of traffic anyway. And if you're coming south into Franklin, or north, I'm sorry, into Franklin, that route lane that comes out there, that's a dangerous intersection as it is, because they have school bus stops there, and also one road up, back lane. And those trucks, you get these 18-wheelers coming down through there, and you hit, and we lived on the hill at the bottom. Them trucks come down through there, and all of a sudden, they've got a 35 reduced speed limit sign at route lane ahead. People come charging down through there. And the trucks, they put on their air brakes all the time. And it's just I think it's just a dangerous, thing to do. Because like I said, there's going to be more traffic up through there. And also, right past route lane, there's a culvert that's underneath the road. And all that water, like I said, we live on the hill. That water comes down underneath 123, down our ditch line into our property, and our driveway is caving in. And I can't get anybody to help with that. The state says it's my fault now. But with all that water coming down through there and everything, I'm not totally opposed to it, but there's need to be some other decisions to be made as far as, the traffic situation and water.
Very good, sir. Thank you. I mean, we don't control speed limits. I mean, it's a state route. We don't set speed limits.
Well, I understand that you don't control them, all right? But my position is that you could recommend, to them.
We can certainly,
If
we can let the county engineer, the traffic
Right.
engineer, we can alert him of your concerns and help connect you to. And then, Michelle, is there any extra density going into this? I mean, these are all,
It's all
it's 2
existing.
acre, it's all existing, correct?
Yeah,
It's all existing, yes, sir.
So there's not gonna be an increase in people there because it's changed to residential. They're already residential.
They're already there.
Yeah. Now, it's my understanding with reading this, that, is there gonna be like, the individual lots are gonna be like 2-point-something acres?
Which I think they already are, yeah.
How
Okay.
many homes are in this? Is there 18? There's 5. So it's already plotted, the 36 acres is already plotted, there are 5 homes there, so they exceed the 2-acre requirement.
There would only be, I guess I can speak, there would only be,
Can you come up and?
Yeah, come on up and identify yourself.
State your name for the record.
Okay.
But there's
I get-
houses
but you
already
get my
built-
point of view.
There's already
Yes,
houses
sir.
built on each parcel.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Byron Hauser. The only place with that you could actually build houses would be where Bob Miller and Betty Miller live, and that's kind of behind my house. But they have no interest whatsoever in wanting any more people around there. As a matter of fact, there's talk going around that behind there was a thing, and they don't even want that to happen.
How much acreages are we talking about?
36, right?
There's 36, I own like a 1.3, and then there's one house that's 2 point something, there's another house that's 2 point something, and then the rest of it is the farmland between Betty Miller and Bob Miller.
Michelle, are they party to this rezoning application?
Yeah, I do. I have signed signatures from everyone that's in that industrial area.
So we're not assuming, so you have petitions
Oh, I
asking
do,
this from
yes.
everybody? Okay,
Okay, good.
all right. Very good. So yeah, this is 2-acre density, so yeah, they're not gonna be throwing a bunch of new houses in there. There are traffic concerns duly noted. We can, pass on, Neil Tunison's information to this gentleman. We can also, connect him with the sheriff's office relative to, enhanced patrols out there, potentially for, speeding. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Yeah, since it's existing houses, the residents themselves want to go from commercial over this. We clearly want you to be able to get a mortgage or a loan on your property that you live in. If there's no more testimony, is there a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
And yes, what is the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to approve the rezoning request, and there's no conditions on that, is that right? Okay.
Second.
And yes, you have your rezoning. Efficient government there for you. Very good. Next public hearing, we have the rezoning application at Blanchester DOHP LLC, a Dollar General, to rezone 4.3 acres in Harlan Township from RU, rural residential, to community commercial business B2.
Thank you. This is case number 2021-07. As you stated, it is DOHP, which is Dollar General. Our applicant is stuck in New York and unable to be here this morning, so I apologize for that. But he said to continue, and I want to make sure that I let you know that he is unfortunately not going to be able to be here. The address is 9079 State Route 123. Parcel is 18-03-377-002-0. It is 4.3 acres. There is 430 feet of frontage. The current zoning is RU, which is 5-acre density. They're asking to rezone it to a B2 commercial for a new Dollar General. Rezoning process, the RPC heard this on August 26th. The RZC heard this on September 14th, and of course, it's before you for final approval. This is an aerial map showing the location. State Route 28 is coming along the bottom, and then 123 to the north. Future land use does have this as commercial. The current zoning, you can see there is B2 all in this area except for this corner piece. Everything around is RU. The proposal, again, this is how the store would be laid out. The front would be facing the intersection. And let me go to the next one. This does show more of the elevations. They are, this shows the brick front. They've also agreed, because of the RZC meeting, to do brick on that north side because there'll be parking there. So any side where there'll be parking or people should see would be brick. This goes into a better view. Again, this is the front of the building. And again, that northern side or the side to the right will also have parking, so that will be brick as well. This is probably a better view. There is a residence to the north, so they are doing a 6-foot fence closest to them. Behind that 6-foot fence is a 50-foot buffer, and then, of course, that residential dwelling. In the back, they also own plenty of property there. They don't intend to do anything with that. They're just going to leave that as trees and green space. To the south is an existing railroad. It is used some, but because of the railroad, they aren't proposing putting any brick on that south side. And because there won't be anyone in the back of the building, they're wanting to leave that metal as well. This is the letter from the RPC. They did recommend approval. And then we had the RZC meeting, which also was a unanimous vote for approval. Are there any questions on this one at this
Did
point?
the township weigh in?
I have no comment from the township.
All right, so this is in an area that all the surrounding area is rural residential zoning? Is that right?
It is, you can see everything in green is rural residential, everything in the red is B2.
Okay.
And this is coming into the village of Blanchester.
Okay, and so they want B2 like what's adjacent to them and across the street from them?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And then, and all the prior bodies recommended this and passed this?
Yes, sir, that's true.
And that's your recommendation too?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
How close is the nearest neighbor?
Let me see if I have a better view. There you can see, this is the closest residence. That's why they're proposing that 50-foot buffer here, and then there will be a 6-foot fence closer to them. So doing a 6-foot fence and then the 50-foot buffer.
What does a 6-foot fence look like?
They're proposing, it's
Like
kind of a,
because you can't see through it?
no, you will not be able to see through the chain link fence. It's a chain link with things, with slats in it. So they won't be able to see, there'll be then landscaping behind that and then that residence.
So the 50-foot buffer, though, is landscape.
Oh, it is. It's trees and shrubs and everything, yes.
All right, and so there's both a fence and then trees, so that there's no visibility between these two. So
There
that
should not
will-
be any, no. And that was a concern in the RZC meeting, and that's why the person from Dollar General, and again, I wish Bob was here, but he did state that that's why they're not having any lights past 10 o'clock. They only have 2 lights that will be on, and that's right above the doors, so they're shutting down all lights after 10 PM. They're trying to be a good neighbor, from what he was describing to us at the RZC meeting.
Was there opposition at the other meetings?
Yes, the gentleman that's present here this morning was also there.
We'll get to you. Thank you. All right, good. I guess he's the next door neighbor, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I have a feeling. Very good. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Thank you, Michelle.
thank you.
Sir, come on in.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Derek Spencer. I live at 9053.
So you're right next door.
Yeah, technically. An addendum to what the young lady said, I believe there was a 10-foot fence, and it was wood, was during our meeting. And the fence was it was shrubbery and then the fence, not the fence, then the shrubbery.
The fence is closer to their store.
Right.
Right.
And the shrubbery is on my side.
But you're immediately, you have the immediate contiguous property.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
So there were some items discussed in the last meeting. There was approval from 2 different bodies, only one I was present for. I didn't know about the other one. Was that a secret?
No, it
Was that
wouldn't
like a
be.
secret meeting? I didn't know about
It wouldn't have
the
been
second one.
secret. It would have been publicly
This
announced.
is
But,
Warren County. We don't have secret meetings.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. My concern is mainly from the presentation from before, presentation now. There were inconsistencies with the flood mapping from before. We had another couple right up the road that confirmed that right where the blue line touches 123, you can see, right where the square, my property line hits the road. Right at that ditch line, there was flooding there. That wasn't on the map. There were a lot of inconsistencies, I believe even now. We were talking about a 10-foot wooden fence. I don't remember his name, I'm not good with the names. The gentleman that's not here.
Bob Gage.
Thank you. We had some inconsistencies with police, traffic, and all that. So we didn't know anything about what the traffic report for this area would be, the increase in traffic. Actually, that's a bad intersection, really bad. So we're gonna put another business here with traffic coming around the S-curve with the trucks. You guys even familiar with this area? Yeah, so how many semis have hit that bridge in the last 4 years? Oh, there've been 3. Sorry, trick question. So the semis wrecking here on the bridge, the traffic here coming from my house, they don't slow down. So, and I haven't seen a police officer since I had to call the law on the last neighbor 8 years ago when he was beating his wife. I've not seen one. So now we have another business. In my opinion, it's not a very high-end business. What's policing gonna be like? Are we gonna increase it? Are we gonna change the traffic in any way? I never had those answers. We got approval from 2 different meetings, but I think the most important one is, I know of a couple Dollar Trees just right up the road, 2 miles up the road. We already have one. We have another one in Mount Repose. The current one inside of Blanchester, which looks like holy hell, excuse my language. But then they're wanting to move it here, and I believe they're projecting a very positive image of this store, of what it's gonna look like, what it's gonna be, and how it's gonna be. I've been a resident since 2008. I bought the property. It was a meth house, and I've been cleaning it up ever since. Now, we're gonna put a Dollar General, which, by the way, there's already been 2 empty Dollar Generals. There's one at the intersection of 48 and 28 that's empty already. Dollar Tree, Dollar General, they're all the same. But he guaranteed me that it's gonna be there for 30 years in pristine, immaculate condition. But he can't guarantee that my property value is not going to go down. I don't plan on moving anytime soon, but in the same aspect, I asked the question last time, and I don't believe I got a straight answer from any of the members. Do you want a dollar store 50 foot from your home? I didn't get an answer last time either. And that's why I'm asking the members here. If you don't want one 50 foot from your home, why do I need one 50 foot from mine? I think it's a valid question. The traffic already is really bad. And from what I've seen in the past, I'm pretty old, really old, gray a little bit. So I've seen these stores come and go. So Bob, I believe his name is Bob, the gentleman, he assured me that Dollar General will be around for 30 years. Cool, JCPenney's not. You know, we have a lot of stores that aren't around anymore. But he could guarantee me that the dollar store would be there for 30 years in pristine condition, looking like that picture. And it wouldn't harm anything. But he couldn't guarantee me my property value wouldn't go down. I have a big concern with that. There's a lot of promises, and there's a lot of approvals based on those promises, and that's what I'm hearing now. They are going to charge, from the meeting, they're going to charge Dollar General a maintenance fee for upkeep. Either Dollar General upkeeps this property, or they will penalize them, and with the money from the penalization, they will upkeep the property.
Who's gonna charge them, Michelle?
This is a different kind of way of doing things. They
Gotta
actually
get
have,
to the microphone, please.
Come on.
they actually have 30 different, at least 30 different Dollar Generals in our area. And what they do is they own the land in the building, and then they let Dollar General lease it from them. So that way, they always maintain those properties. It's just the way that they maintain all of their properties, is that they lease it back to them, so that therefore, they're always in control of how that property looks.
So right across the street from you, sir, is what exactly? There's a parking lot?
Currently,
There's
it's
a parking
currently a
lot,
car
there's a
lot.
commercial, what is that?
It's a car lot now. It was a gas station.
Okay, so it's the zoning that this wants, and is it currently abandoned, or what is it?
No, it's a car lot. Actually, it's autopilot.
Okay,
They
so
get
there's
really
an
good business
autopilot
there.
store there, is that what it
Yeah.
is? Okay,
They sell used cars.
okay, and they're.
I think
and they-
it's a positive for that area.
Restaurant, right.
It's a
and a restaurant,
positive.
Right, okay, so this, would you say that this usage that the Dollar General wants, that's consistent with the usage right across the street from you?
That's a car lot.
Okay, right, but it's got a building associated with it, and it's got a car
Correct.
to it.
And it's got a building, and it was an eyesore there for a while.
Okay, but it's a building that's commercial, and it's got a parking lot. This thing is gonna be a commercial building with a parking lot, but unlike the thing across the street, which you can see, I think, from your house directly, they're gonna buffer you so you don't see it. That's what we've been told today.
That's what they've been promised.
Okay, all right.
And if I can just add too, this is another one of these properties where back before 2012, this was a B2. 2012, when we sent out the notices, this particular person that owned this said, I want it changed to residential. So prior to 2012, this was already a B2.
Oh, so prior to 2012, the current thing that we're changing back to B2 was B2?
It was B2, but 2012, the cards went out and the person who owned the property at the time said, wait, I want to be
Okay, and all
residential.
the planning documents showed that this was gonna be B2 in the future?
Yeah, our Flume shows this as commercial, yes, sir.
Because most of our major state route intersections are all commercial.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Right, and that's what this one was beforehand. It wasn't like, oh my God, it used to, everything was B2 at every intersection.
Okay,
It
but
wasn't
when
nothing new.
did you buy next door?
Huh?
When did you buy?
2008,
Okay,
and it was residential,
when was it changed from B2?
2012. So when I
So
bought
was
it,
commercial.
But no, when you bought it, it was commercial.
when I bought it, it was commercial, and my intent was to change it to residential. The person that had it there before, he had loan issues, that he couldn't get loans on it because.
Were you gonna buy it? You said you were gonna change it to residential? How,
I was trying to change it then when I bought it.
typically it's reserved for the owner. Were you gonna buy it?
No, my property was as well. Mine
Oh.
was adjacent, so.
No,
it-
but my question really was this. Is it true that when you bought your property, the neighboring property here that we're talking about was zone B2?
It was zone B2,
So
but
you came to the property and bought your property knowing that this is B2. Subsequent to your purchase of your property, it went to residential, and now they want to flip it back to the zoning you had when you purchased your property next door.
right.
Okay. I just
When I
wanna
bought
make
it,
sure I
it
know the
was
facts.
a lapse. I'm not an expert, I'm not a commissioner, I don't know the zoning that well. So when I bought the property, I didn't know it was exactly B2.
But you said you wanted to buy it and change it to residential.
On my property, it was residential.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the owner of that was residential. So it was B2 anyways with a residence on it. The same situation we just reviewed a moment ago.
Okay.
It had residence on a commercial property. So that's not a secret either. So regardless of what it was, whether it was a business or a residence, it had a residence on it.
Well, you understand, none of what's going on here is ever a secret, because all of the planning documents are public, all of the zoning is public, you can search the records to find all of this stuff out. So none of what we're doing is secret, none of what they did over there was secret.
Right.
Okay.
The problem was it wasn't as clear for a novice. So, yeah, information is great. Everybody has information. The problem is, do you have information at the time, and are you ability to use that information effectively? At the time, I did not. So, to back to the 2008, I was younger. I had no clue. This is my first home. So I was not clear on zoning or how the map worked, so
Well, you understand that they're trying to accommodate you by buffering you?
I completely
And
understand
they're trying
that.
to make it so that you, one, don't have to see them, while you see what's across the street, which is commercial, and has a parking lot and a building, not dissimilar, maybe not in as good a condition as this will be in, but they're trying to accommodate you by putting in a fence, by putting in vegetation or, trees, shrubs, to block your view, and they've also apparently indicated that they're going to turn lights off so you don't see anything at night beyond 10 o'clock. And I take it that they were doing all of that to accommodate you.
I think they were just doing that to accommodate zoning.
Okay.
I brought up the aspect of inside Blanchester, they have trucks dieseling all night, and he guaranteed me they did not. But I live right there. I guarantee they do. You guys don't drive there at 9, 10 o'clock at night. I do. They do. He asked me, he said, during that meeting, he said, there's nobody living in that property, right? That was near the end of the meeting. He said, I don't think there's anybody living in that. I was like, absolutely. There's a family with 3 boys living there. So he was not clear on that.
Is this, you're talking about the he is the
Bob,
applicant?
Bob, who is not
Who's
currently here.
representing Dollar General, who couldn't make it today?
Right.
Okay.
But that was a recorded meeting, so I'm sure it was there. But in that, so we have those, there's not people there? This is your property that you're purchasing. You don't know that there's people still living there?
Yeah,
I mean-
which honestly, we're kind of getting in the weeds. I
Right,
almost
I
don't
understand
care about that.
So
What I care about
here's what I care about is, I see a lot of just posturing to get this through. But in 5 years and 10 years, when I do decide to sell, if I do decide to sell, which I probably won't, but is this going to reduce my value because Family Dollar has left? And now we have an empty space, which is not maintained. What do we do then? I don't know.
Right, what we try to do is, just in the big picture, we want balanced in our communities. Warren County can't be all residential.
I understand that.
We have to have businesses there paying taxes. That's kind of the secret sauce of how we keep some of the property taxes as low as we do. Generally speaking, at the intersection of 2 state routes, that is a prime location for business. That's why it was zoned business before. So if there was a business that was going to be out in this area where we like to encourage businesses, it's honestly exactly right there. However, we want to be cognizant of your concerns. It sounds like the other folks have been very cognizant of your concerns and saying, let's put up a fence, let's put up a buffer, let's maintain 50 feet, let's turn off the lights. And your response was, well, what if they don't do that? Well, if they don't do that, then we have very, very strict zoning laws or regulations. And if that comes into play, those are violations of zoning. We can take, this is our prosecutor, we can take action against those businesses, correct, Bruce? If someone violates an agreement like this?
If there's a regulation in place that requires that, were there conditions placed on this?
There were no conditions. At least nothing was made into motion. Everything was pretty much on the site plan that was given to us.
Well, what,
So if
Does
there's
this
any
have to go
issues,
through site plan review?
if they decide to move forward with it.
well, I guess, isn't the question you're asking, Bruce, do they have to do the fence? Do they have to do the vegetation? Do they have to do those
Do
things?
they have to turn off the lights? I mean,
They don't at this stage, but it sounds like they'll have to go through site plan review, and those will be placed as conditions upon them in the site review
Oh,
process.
because we're just changing zoning.
All
but
you're
then
doing is changing the
But
zoning.
then, once it comes back to us eventually, right, on a site plan review on this,
This
right?
commercial will come back to you, yes.
Correct. So then, at that point, that's where we actually put in conditions.
Correct. And it
Because
sounds
we're
like
not-
they've agreed to those things.
Okay. Yeah, see, there's another step to this. All we're talking about today is changing zoning.
Right.
Once they do that, then they come in with the building plans. That's where we can force them. You really do have to put brick on these 2 sides. You really do have to put a fence here. That's where we get into more of the negotiations of, hey, the nitty-gritty of turning it off. And then that's where this is all approved with these conditions. If they violate those conditions, then there's teeth to our zoning.
Okay, so pretty much, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you have plenty of people here. Currently, I have a back porch. I built a back porch. And I have about 1,000 feet of length to my property. And I shoot hand cannons and rifles right there, which is perfectly legal. Is there going to be a problem with this?
Nope.
Not
You're in
at
a
all.
township.
In the future, there's going to be no problems with this.
Long as you don't,
Oh, of
again,
course
I
not.
don't
I'm
want
not
to
going to
speak.
shoot at anybody's house.
Right,
That's
right, as long
regardless.
as you're not endangering any of the neighbors, but yeah, you're in a township, right, Bruce? You can fire away.
Yeah, zoning's not gonna regulate that
Yeah.
anyway.
But yeah, it's just a general question you're asking. This is
I
a
am
zoning
asking a
hearing, but
general
yeah.
question.
My
From
understanding
that-
is no.
So if Dollar General, in 9 months, I'm sure it takes a while to build this, probably 12 months. But if they come up and say, hey, this dude next door is just firing off a hand cannon, and this lady here gets dropped all of her eggs and wants a refund because he scared the crap out of her. You know, I apologize. But here's the issue is there's certain reservations you have as a homeowner and a neighbor. All right, I'm not gonna go next door at 9 o'clock at night and be like, listen to this, Bob, boom, you know, there are reservations, but when there's a business open, from daylight till dark, when am I gonna shoot?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's your property. You,
Yeah.
Right.
you keep doing what you're doing.
So we're gonna guarantee me that Blanchester is not going to now infringe upon Dollar General to take the city limits out there because, well, they got a reason to now.
Well, even if they do on that property, you don't have to.
Okay,
You're in a township.
As
They
long-
can't,
as long
they
as they
can't
won't
take you
grab
without
me.
your consent.
okay, that's cool. So it's a guarantee. I like that. And then just the last thing, I believe I asked it in the last meeting, and I'll ask it again. I believe I'll repeat myself. Do you want a Dollar General 50 foot from your home?
If I lived on the intersection of two state
I
routes,
didn't
I
ask
knew that was
I didn't
possible.
ask that. You can put a Dollar General anywhere. They don't need 4.3 acres. You can put a Dollar General anywhere. There's one right there next to a trailer park in Wilmington that's on a little square.
Well, the only issue that we have before us is the zoning question, not the use question.
Right.
Because the zoning determines a permitted use. And
I
I will tell
understand
you,
that. And
since
as
you're
soon as
really
you
asking for my
approve that-
opinion, I'll give it to you. So my opinion about zoning is generally the property owner should be allowed to determine the zoning that he wants as long as he's not a nuisance to the neighbors. And that's really the only justification for imposing zoning regulations is some sort of a nuisance standard. Because this was always B2, you moved to it with as a B2. Now the person wants to change it back to B2. My opinion is it should be allowed to be B2.
Well, if I could correct that, it wasn't always B2. They changed it, all the intersections
I
early
know- I
on.
now know the history behind it.
Yeah.
You've asked me for my opinion, and I'm telling you my opinion. And so I'm not giving you an opinion about the usage within the B2. Because we're not being asked that really today. All we're being asked is to determine whether or not it should be a B2 zoning. And that's what I would say to you is the answer I've already given to you. I like you. You're colorful. I'm gonna remember this testimony that you gave today. And I want them, when we get this back, where we're gonna ask the question about protecting you with landscaping and fencing, I assure you, we will be considering your concerns.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, that question, unfortunately, I need a yes or no. I really do. I feel like I'm still being handled.
No.
Do you want a
No,
Dollar
we're not-
General 50 foot from,
If
would
I-
you enjoy it in the future?
If there's no other retail business around me, absolutely.
Okay.
If I had to, nowhere else to go, absolutely, I'd want one right next to me.
Well, I
But it-
appreciate everything that Commissioner Grossman said about this with respect to the use, and it's the same, I mean, I just agree about the use of of zoning laws, governments,
Right.
you know,
I-
use of zoning
that-
laws. And in the same time, you know, believing that the owner of this property has rights. I similarly agree that you have rights on your property, and so would agree that that's what gives you the ability to discharge your firearms. That's what gives you, the ability to use your property the way that you want to use it. And so I favor both of those things because that's what allows both of them to happen. But like Commissioner Grossman said, this is, you know, we want to balance interests to the best of our ability. So when we see it back, we want to do those things that, you know, maintain that separation and it's not blighted and, you know, knowing that we've got some authority to be able to, you know, make sure that the applicant keeps their end of the bargain in terms of maintaining it. And so I just come to this as from a property rights standpoint, and so the use is less important to me than the rights of the owners within reason to be able to use their property the way they say fit.
Right, and I agree too. You can do whatever you want on your property, but as long as it doesn't infer on the surrounding area, and that's what you know, and that's here. Hindsight, you know, I have two friends that live in Clinton County. You can see where the line is, you know. A mile up the road, my friend has an acre and a half and a 1,500 square foot home, and it's nice, and he pays $500 less a year in taxes than I do because of Clinton County and Warren County. So I look at that and I go, it's Warren County. You know, that's what you get. And by the way, nice area around here. I like the construction. But in that, if I go to sell, and this is what I'm talking about, he has a right to sell
Sir,
his
we
property.
can't go down that
I
rabbit
know,
hole.
I understand we can't.
Again, we were asked something today. We're trying to protect your rights as a property owner. Your next door neighbor has rights as a property owner.
Right.
That's all we're talking about. We appreciate you, and I do personally appreciate you taking a blighted house and putting love and commitment and money into it. So thank you for doing that. But yeah, we got to wrap this up. This is way beyond
Okay.
what we're doing.
That's
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Is there a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Yes.
Yes. What is the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion to approve that the B2 zoning be allowed and it be changed from the current zoning to rural residential to B2.
Second.
And yes. Very good. Thank you. Now, we will come back to our 9:30 work session on sewers. We're sorry, we're normally not like this.
Whoever only is allowed for 30 minutes for the benefits.
Well, this is Tina's,
It wasn't me this time.
it's this is Tina's first week on the job, so benefits meeting.
We always spend over an hour talking about the benefits.
This next subject actually kind of gotten
Slid in.
slid in, and so we were kind of condensed.
Okay, let's go.
Not all Brian's fault.
And then,
But mostly.
Good morning. My name is Chris Roush. I'm with the Warren County Water and Sewer Department. This is a continuation of our meeting from 2 weeks ago when we met on October 12th to discuss the Stotler 2 property. And the Stotler 2 property, the reason why we're bringing this up is RPC sent out a revised preliminary plan for Stotler 2 and for consideration. And that plan is on the agenda for the October 28th RPC meeting. And typically, our department, when we review these plans, we comment on water and sewer service to developments. In this case, the water provider is Western Water, and then we are the sewer service provider. And this property, as we talked about back on October 12th, has some history to it that dates back nearly 2 decades. And part of the sewer service to this property, the conditions in it date back to the Stotler Settlement Agreement from 2005. And in that agreement, that settlement agreement between the developer and the Warren County and the county commissioners, I should say RPC, there's several conditions. One of the conditions, and I'll run through a couple of those because these are all topics that we'll probably end up talking about today, is the Stotler 2 plan was approved in the settlement agreement. So the settlement agreement approved the Stotler 2 revised preliminary plan, and it consisted of 371 lots with Hamilton Township cluster zoning. So the plan that was submitted back 2 decades ago, nearly 2 decades ago, had 371 lots in a cluster zoning style. And then in that settlement agreement, it stated that that plan, that development had to reach final plat within 36 months of the settlement agreement.
What had to be approved within 36 months?
The final plat, subdivision plat, had to be approved, had to be submitted within 36 months of that settlement agreement. Okay, obviously that did not happen because we're talking about that now.
So there was an approved agreement that was overseen by the court, I believe, and there were several conditions. And one of those conditions was you had to have a final plat, which is what we used in those days, within 36 months
Yes, that's correct.
for this agreement to take force.
Yes, it says subdivision plat Stotler 1 shall have,
Statler 1 or Statler 2?
this is, well, Stotler 1 should be 24 months, and then Stotler 2 shall be 36 months to submit a final subdivision plan. So that's what the settlement agreement states, 36 months for Stotler 2.
Is that in our, in our folder here? That
Yeah,
statement?
the statement is on, it's on that page of your house one.
That's what I wanted to look at.
Where? Oh,
Right there.
This is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners you're referring me to?
This was, yes, there's a resolution 05-1726, which was the approval of the settlement agreement. And within that settlement agreement, it was on, I don't have a page number here, but it was on probably the first, or the second page, I think, of that settlement agreement. It states that the developer shall have 36 months from the signing of the full and final settlement and mutual release of all claims to submit a final subdivision plat for Stotler 2.
Now, you're looking at, you're reading the thing that's in the blue zone there? I mean, it's been red, is that what you're reading? Or are you reading the resolution?
This is the actual settlement agreement.
Oh, okay, that's, we don't have that.
You don't have the actual agreement
Oh,
in your packet.
Do you need a copy? I have an extra.
yes, could you give me a copy of that?
sure.
That'd be great. Here, I don't want to take your copy. Oh, okay. Super duper.
we got 2 copies. Sure, yeah.
Thank you. All right, so is it your, okay, I can read what the document says. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so it called out cluster development, it called out maximum 371 lots. It called out that the plat be submitted and approved, submitted within 36 months. And then it also called out several other conditions in there. It called out that the Stotler 2 development shall be grandfathered into the sewer district, and the developer is authorized to use the Hildebrandt sewer easement. So if we look at that map, when we look at the map, the Hildebrandt property is the property to the north, the northeast or northwest of Stotler 2. So the easement that was obtained by the Warren County Water and Sewer Department, when you see the sewer, this closest sewer, that is Wellington Estates. And then, so the idea was that there would be extension of the sewer on the north through Hildebrandt's property to Stotler 2. Okay, so that's, so it's calling out, the agreement calls out that this property, Stotler 2, is grandfathered in to our sewer district, and that they have the ability to obtain sewer service through this easement that was negotiated.
And that easement is currently existing?
Yes, the easement is currently existing. The
All right.
permanent easement exists, but the temporary easement for construction purposes has expired.
All right. So this property that we're talking about today was put into, pursuant to this settlement agreement, into our sewer district. Is that right?
That's what is in that,
Okay,
That is
agreement.
not what it says.
Okay, I agree with that. It's not what it says. It says that they're permitted to get sewers, correct?
No, in paragraph 3, what the county commissioner, or paragraph B3, what the county commissioners agreed to, was because of the court decision, it said the preliminary subdivision plat is grandfathered. The preliminary subdivision plat is grandfathered and entitled to access to public sanitary sewer. But you cannot read that provision in isolation. You have to read that provision in the context of the entire document. And the entire document requires you to factor in paragraph A, and paragraph A says, and this is just an interpretation, that that preliminary subdivision plat has expired as of November the 9th of 2008.
Okay, so given the fact that there's a interpretation on this, what is it that you're asking us to use to interpret that? What is the point of that exactly, Bruce? I mean, are you saying that the expiration means that we should interpret this to mean that there's no longer a right for this property to have sewers?
That is correct. That's my interpretation. Chris Sprouse, as your sanitary sewer engineer, is here because of past practices to come and get the Board of County Commissioners' direction before he issues his comments letter to the RPC for its executive committee meeting on Thursday to review the revised preliminary plan.
All right, and I understood from your presentation that was very helpful last week that that's exactly what was going on.
That's the purpose.
So now I want to come back to you, Mr. Roush. So this particular property, you knew back at the time that this was entered would likely be obtaining sewers, because of course it was anticipated with this that they would be proceeding within the 36-month period. Was there anything that you did at that time to accommodate sewers in this area in order for capacity, or has anything happened since that time which would change our ability to provide sewer capacity to this area?
Well, Commissioner Grossman, I was not here back in 2005 when this was negotiated.
Well, I would assume, so let me guess, based upon your review of the record in the past, is it your understanding that at the time this document was agreed upon, that there was capacity to provide with our, wastewater treatment plants, et cetera, there's capacity that we had so that you could have sewers in this area? And or did we make plans at the time or subsequent, you saw that so that it could? And I take it
Yes.
that there's, okay,
Yes,
and then is there still capacity today?
It appears that, planning was done in order to provide service to this property.
Okay, so
This
there-
flow goes to a collection system, would go to a collection system and make its way to the Village on the Green lift station.
Okay, so my question is that there was, in light of this agreement, there was planning done, there was accommodation done, there was understanding that this would have a certain level of density of housing that could be accommodated by our sewer system.
Yes, it was
And that still exists
planned.
today?
That capacity, we believe, is still there.
Okay.
Appears to still be there. There are some improvements that have to be made that are called out in that settlement agreement specific to our Village on the Green lift station, where there will be a fee that is collected, and those monies will be used for the upgrades of the Village on the Green lift station. So there was, and there was the easements that were obtained from the Hildebrandt property. So there was thoughts about how to provide sewer to this property, and there was thoughts about upgrades to the lift station there. So this was included in the overall planning that was done back in the 2000s.
Okay, and this is all in Hamilton Township, correct?
This is in Hamilton Township, that is correct.
And have you had any contact with Hamilton Township about this development, about provision of sewers in this area?
I have. I've had some discussion with their solicitor on this issue, and they are here today. So Brent Centers, the administrator for Hamilton Township, is here, along with Ben Yoder. So.
Thank you.
So. There are other conditions that are included in this settlement agreement that we can go through, that are kind of outside of the sewer portions of it. There were roadway improvements that were specified in that settlement agreement. And those roadway improvements included cul-de-sacing of Mounts Road and turn lanes turn lanes along Mounts Road and along Zoar Road, And it calls out that those improvements shall be assessed to the property owners of this subdivision. So there would be an assessment that would be set up, the improvements would be done, and then there would be an assessment that would be placed onto these property owners when they sold these lots.
And that even the design of the units, I see that they're empty nesters. That was actually in this settlement agreement was actually spelled out because there was such a concern about school-aged children that, again, there's another bigger question on relative to does this settlement agreement have any weight or not, because it's not been complied with. But if we're talking about the provisions of the settlement agreement that was reached at that point, then yeah, there was an impact fee to the schools, and there was the type of dwelling units were actually defined in this.
That's correct. There was a $75 per lot fee.
$750.
I'm sorry, $750 fee per lot that was to be donated to Little Miami High School. If you total up the 371 lots and apply that $750 fee, that would be a potential $278,000 that would be donated to the Little Miami School District. And then regarding the dwelling units, there was intended to be 140 empty nester dwelling units that were supposed to be designed and marketed to be occupied by persons without school-aged children. So there's 140 units that were supposed to be marketed towards empty nesters. And again, this was designed to be, Statler 2 was designed around.
What then is the recourse for the property owner?
Develop the property at a density that does not require sanitary sewer. Remember, there is current legislation, the 2005 resolution, that says that the sewer improvement area boundary is consistent with the Hamilton Township urban service boundary dated April 11th, 2000, which is Zoar Road. This property, Statler 2, is east of Zoar Road. So the only reason it was considered was because the court found that the RPC failed to follow its own subdivision regulations and ordered RPC to approve the preliminary plat, as it would call it in those days, which had been filed in '04. But in '04, this board modified the boundaries consistent with the urban service boundary map of Hamilton Township, and in '05 modified that resolution to make exceptions for properties that had either a final or a preliminary plat approval. Number 2 detrimentally relied upon that plat approval, and number 3 made improvements, which did not happen on Statler 2. So if the interpretation is that the preliminary plat has expired and they are not entitled to sewer this property, the resolution from '05, which is the current law in Warren County, does not allow it to be sewered. You would, to do otherwise, you would have to go through a public process to amend or modify the boundaries of the sewer improvement area to do that. And if the developer's proposal is to sewer this and/or anything else, it would necessitate that. And if you were inclined to do so, you will open the door to so much more property coming in, including the 100 acres that Chris has pointed out is on the northeast side, the Hildebrandt property. You've turned down the property that came before you 2 different times, the ZFC property, which is on the east side of Zoar Road. It's 100 acres. So, and I think this developer is going to eventually propose the following month a property to the south to come in. So we're talking about 300 to 400 acres that could potentially come in and be populated with houses at a high density, depending on if you were inclined to modify the boundaries.
Yeah, so the real question then is, in my mind anyway, is, based on everything that you've said, is that if we determine that this agreement no longer applies, then the only real recourse the applicant has is to litigate to say that this agreement does apply.
The applicant on Thursday before, and again, there's no applicant before you. The applicant with the RPC on Thursday as a successor in interest, assuming they meet that criteria as a successor in interest, they probably just have an option at this point. I don't know that they own it, or they could get the owner of the property to do so, could file some sort of deck action asking the court to interpret the provisions in the document. They would have that potential recourse, yes.
And so the bottom line is that in that instance, if the board says, no, this doesn't apply any longer, and the applicant or successor in interest or some relevant party chooses to litigate, if the court were to rule against the board and say you must honor these terms, then the risk that you are sharing doesn't apply. It only applies to that's within the confines of this agreement. It doesn't apply to the property to the north and some other adjacent property. So it's the only way to open the door to approving approving the development outside the service boundary, the sewer service boundary.
This particular 171 acre parcel, yes.
Yeah, so why, Bruce, are these clauses, that is A3 and B3, why are they to be interpreted synergistically as if they are dependent upon each other? Why isn't B3 an independent grant of grandfathering of sewer for this property, regardless of what's stated in A3?
Because B3 indicates what's being grandfathered is the preliminary plat of Stotler 2, and read in its entirety from A3, that one had a sunset of 36 months.
So in other words, you read this agreement as not actually granting the right of this particular property, which has a particular parcel and a particular identification as it being entitled to sewers. Your point is that the only reason why it's entitled to sewers is because of the preliminary plat issue.
Yeah, because the commissioners had adopted their resolution setting the boundary, which was east of there. And there was a lot going on at the time. Chris wasn't there, but I was. I wrote this. And a lot of things that were going on, there was a moratorium because we were trying to determine how many preliminary plats, how many potential lots there were out there.
It was a limit. I wouldn't call it a moratorium.
No,
there was a 600
There was
home
a
limit.
moratorium which expressly, different resolution that prohibited the sanitary engineer and the Warren County Water and Sewer Department from issuing any letters to the RPC during a 6-month moratorium that had a potential renewal of 6 more months. So Mr. Reniker, Chris's predecessor, was not even allowed to give them a letter during that time period, and that was part of this challenge as well. Another part of this, and that was why the commissioners were a party to the settlement agreement. And then there was also the resolution itself was challenged by the developer and the HBA of Greater Cincinnati in separate lawsuits, but all three of the lawsuits were settled. You'll notice there's various case numbers depending on the paragraphs that you look at. And they were challenging the commissioner's decision to modify the boundaries and make the Hamilton Township urban service boundary the line of demarcation. That was being challenged as well. So there was this global settlement of all of those issues. So there was a case against the RPC, there was a case against the commissioners, and that's why both of these are parties to this litigation.
So but let me go back. You said something that is interesting to me, Bruce. You're the author of this document?
A negotiated document, yes. Meaning Joe Trouth on behalf of PBM, who, as I recall, was probably Dixon at the time. The HBA was represented by Rick Palo. We were negotiating the terms of this document, so we all had input into its content.
So you understood the legal import of what I just asked you?
I did.
Okay. So you would not claim sole authorship of this. You're saying that there was a combination of people that were authors of this?
I was the original drafter, and there were a lot of markup versions, I'm sure.
Okay, all right, good enough.
You mean with lawyers, there'd be lots of drafts?
No, because if there's ambiguity in a document that somebody drafts, the ambiguity goes to the person who didn't draft it. He gets the benefit of the doubt. So that's why I asked the question, was if we were the drafters of this document, there's ambiguity with regard to it, then the people that are the successors in interest to this, the successor in interest to the original person, which was this PBM or whatever it was, they would get the benefit of being able to say, wait a second, I don't agree with this interpretation that's going on here, and I get the benefit of a interpretation that is more favorable because I didn't draft this document. That was the point of my question.
Only if a court determines there's an ambiguity.
I agree.
Only.
I agree.
Right, and the way I look at this, again, because I was party to it at that time, I'd been a commissioner for like 30 seconds.
You had been a commissioner for like 9 months at this point, I think.
Whatever.
I mean,
It seemed more like 30 seconds to me. That there was a lot of stuff going on at this time. This was when the rules were changing. This was when you had unimpeded growth in Hamilton Township, and it was literally crippling not only the township, but the school, fiscal emergencies all over the place. The Board of Commissioners had to draw a demarcation line in the sand and say, this has got to stop. We're going to try to encourage growth in concentric rings around urban service areas where it made sense. The more rural they got, fire, police, EMS, you could not provide those services. So just because a developer or landowner wanted to have high density in a certain area, that's not in the public's interest, and there was a line drawn in the sand. And that line coincided with the already established Hamilton Township line, correct?
Yes.
And so right at that time, then that was when, boom, it was dropped. This is it. Then at that time, there were folks that said, wait a second, we've relied on this, we've actually gone out, we've spent money, we've done this, and we've made improvements based on what we thought the rules were before this.
Yes.
And so then there was this one particular parcel, this Stotler 2, that wound up saying, we think we're in, even though clearly you look at the map, we're out, we think we're in because of these conditions. Court came in, this appellate court came in, the 12th District Court of Appeals came in and said, yeah, you know what, we're going to settle all this, and we're going to do a couple of things. And we're going to start by the RPC and Commissioner Kilburn specifically, because he was named individually in this suit. They're going to do some things, and that's listed in paragraph A. And paragraph A is saying exactly what's going to go down. That part 1, they're going to dismiss this. They're going to, part 2, Stotler 1 proceeds through the ordinary course of action to final plat with the 23 conditions. And Part 3 of the precursor to the rest of the document is the germane point of this whole discussion. And it says specifically, and I want to read it for the record, Part 3 of Part A, which is the precursor, that goes into everything else. It's all basically, in my interpretation, based on what this is saying. It says that the RPC will apply the subdivision regulations in effect in May of 2004, which was basically before the demarcation came down, right?
Yes.
That the RPC will apply the subdivision regulations in effect in May 2004 for both Stotler 1 and Stotler 2, and accepts as approved the revised preliminary subdivision plat for Stotler 2 as attached here to, subject to the conditions set forth in the staff report for Stotler 2. PBM shall have 24 months from the signing of this full and final settlement and mutual release of all claims to submit a final subdivision plat for Stotler 1, and here it is, and shall have 36 months to submit a final subdivision plat for Stotler 2. They did not comply with this agreement.
But here's the problem with that analysis. Because while they're given the right to do it within that period of time, it doesn't actually say that they have to do it within.
The word shall, I read the word shall.
No, that's a grant of a benefit to them, that they absolutely have that period of time to do it. But I'm not prejudging it. I want to hear from the township, I want to hear from the applicant, I want to hear from all those people. But I don't read this document necessarily to mean that they have to do it within this period of time. They're granted the absolute right to do it within this period of time. There's no question about that. But do they not have the right to do it afterwards? Is it really not grandfathered in? I'm not positive. I want to hear from the other folks before I make any, if I'm
Right, but this,
supposed to-
I agree that, yeah, we're not making any judgment right this second.
Yeah.
But this is kind of setting the table of the discussion, because again,
Well, yeah.
because you're also now telling us, I think this is a new opinion from you, that if we do grant this, then we would actually have to change our entire urban service area?
No, you could make an interpretation that the settlement agreement applies and that they're entitled to it, so you wouldn't have to modify that.
Which is where my head would be.
But if that's the case, then again, clearly they have to run a sewer line through these contiguous properties, and then there is a sewer line on my property, why can I not tie into it?
Commissioner Young, I think maybe that's a question for the developer to answer, because at this point, the properties have developed probably a little bit different than what was anticipated 15 years ago, and there's more than one access to sewer to serve this property. There's actually three options, three sewer
But that's
options.
a detriment to the developer. This agreement says, here's how it has to run. And if their civil engineer wants to advocate that it's sewerable elsewhere, then it clearly does not comply with the settlement agreement.
Well, I think the settlement agreement says they have the ability to use that easement. I don't think it says they have to use it. They have authorization to use that easement.
And so, are you here today to be able to provide some letter to RPC by Thursday? And is it, look, I think this is a pretty big issue, and I'm not sure we're gonna resolve this here today. So is there anything wrong with saying, this isn't settled yet, so go ahead and do what you wanna do, but it may not happen?
Well, I'd like to hear from the township, David.
But let
and
me
from the
answer that
applicant.
before you do,
Okay,
if
go
I
ahead.
may. Yeah, you're correct. That's what he could do. And there's already a staff report, which is a public record, that's been circulated to the executive committee members with a recommendation. And the recommendation will be that they will not stop the developer's project from moving forward. There would just be a condition that says you can only do this at final plat stage if the county commissioners give you access So you don't have to make a decision today. He's here to fulfill the practice of, does the board want to give him any direction about what to put in his comments letter, period. You don't have to resolve it today.
Well, I kind of like what you just told me, because ultimately this decision is ours, not yours. To me, the only thing that you should be saying is that if the commissioners determine that this is sewerable and that sewers are to be permitted in this thing, which is our determination, not yours.
That's correct.
Then that's how your letter should read. And in addition, I think it's relevant that you've got capacity, and there's not an issue with regard to that. So from my standpoint, okay, everybody in the audience kind of knows the questions I've been asking and why I've been asking them. But I also would like to hear from, when our chairman wants to, I want to hear from the township and the applicant too.
Right, anything else to add?
No, I think we've kind of covered all the topics, all the issues out there. So at this point, unless you have other things to ask of me.
Sure, we'll hear, I think from the applicant first, and then let the township hear that, and then address the board. That's all right?
We came expecting a short meeting, and we're going to be very short. But first, thank you, Chris, for...
Your name, sir, for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kenneth Campbell, Morris Court, Mason, Ohio. I have with me my partner, Greg Burling, and he will introduce himself when he comes to the microphone later and goes through our plan. But Chris, thank you for giving us part of your time. I called Chris and asked him if, I saw he was on the agenda, if we could use part of his time to just bring you update on the plan. Unlike at least 3 people in this room, I do not have a law degree, so we're not going to get into any of the legal aspects of this, just the plan and what our thoughts are, what our intentions are, why, how this project has developed into what we are proposing to regional planning on Thursday. So with that, thanks, and thanks to each of you commissioners for spending some time with us here today, because we're not here in applying for anything, any action on your part. We're here just to try to give you an update on what we are here for as part of as a developer of this property. With those things being said, our overview, as you've heard, will be before Planning Commission on Thursday. The expectation is we would then, to complete the plan approval process, go before the township trustees. That would probably be early December is the way the planning would work out. Eventually, we will be before you about the sewer boundary. And our application, when we come before you, will be for a modification of the sewer boundary to assist in developing this project in a fashion that we think is better for the township, better for the county.
So you're going to ask us to modify the sewer district?
That'll be a request. We believe we have sewer to the property, and we understand there's different opinions on that, and so be it. But yeah, to have this project be improved, among other improvements, the density would drop from 2.17 to 1.72. But to accomplish that, we need some road accesses that we've discussed with the township. And if this project would go ahead, we believe they would support that, if this project went ahead.
Well,
We
Ken,
understand.
why would you need to change the sewer boundary if we determine that you're entitled under this document as a successor in interest to PBM in this document to sewers? Then it wouldn't matter whether it's in the sewer area, would it? for you.
Yeah, the difference, and I'll let my partner, Greg Berlin, go through this. The project can be developed as it's currently planned. It can be developed. We believe there's a better way to develop it. We've had discussions with the township that would lead us to believe that if the project were developed, and again, the if in there, if the project were developed, that there's a better way to accomplish the project.
Okay.
I can, and again, I just want to state for the record, I really like both of you. You guys do quality projects, blah, blah, blah. So if it seems like at some point I'm beating you up, it's because I'm beating you up on this particular project, but I would speak on behalf of your character and your end product. I just want to get that in the record. Nothing I would say other than that. But let me stop you right now. If you're going to ask us to modify the sewer district because you don't like all the conditions, I can tell you right now, that's a hard stop with me, period, end of story. Because if we modify it for one, then everyone in this district, in this area, is subject to that. So if you're going down the path, if you kind of don't like this whole setup, because again, I'm very iffy on whether you have them to begin with or not. I don't think you do, but again, based on the advice of counsel, maybe that can be interpreted a different way, but the way I read it right now, you don't have access to them. But if you're going to come in and even, let's assume you are saying, hey, this 2005 decision, this settlement, you've got sewers. And if you guys are making the business decision of it's not going to work under these, yeah, we get some higher density, but just from the road aspect or the impact fee or whatever business considerations you guys are having and saying that it doesn't work for you, I'm telling you, there's not a chance. I'm going to fight with every bone in my body not to amend the sewer district to let you guys do this.
What he's not saying in plain English is he's using the word project. Project means additional property besides Stotler 2. That's clearly not in the sewer improvement area. He's talking about property to the south to make a better entrance, and yes, it clearly would be, but he's saying we need to modify the sewer improvement area to add those additional properties. The density will be lower, it'll bring the overall density of the project down, but that's what he's talking about. So if you say, there would be no reason, as you pointed out, if you said the settlement agreement gives you sewer on Stotler 2, 171 acres, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying the project, and the project, Greg's probably going to explain to you, includes more than just Stotler 2.
Let me help clarify that. When we put this project on the contract, the land on the contract, we put it on the contract with the understanding that, oh, no, that's the new plan. If we can get the,
So when you say under contract, while he's getting that up, Ken, you're saying a contract for you to actually purchase this property?
To purchase the
forward?
property.
Because you, right now, you have an option to get this based upon certain conditions being satisfied, and if they're not, you don't have to buy the property.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
I get
yeah,
it.
it's a typical
Okay, I get it.
land contract.
I get it.
But it's not
We
just
go on-
this parcel, it's probably other parcels involved.
No, the original contract, and it took a long time to negotiate, it was actually signed the end of June of this past year. And when we looked at that project, and it was brought to us, the land was brought to us, we got in touch with spent time with the property owners, and we looked at it, we ran our pro formas, initial pro formas, and the project works. And we can put together a very nice project on that plan, with those boundaries, that sewer, those road access points, those densities, all the conditions that are in there. We can do that, and we would have a viable project. Primarily because Hamilton Township and Warren County done a very good job, very attractive places to live, and this is a rare piece that has sewer, in our opinion, our attorney's opinion. So that project with 2 entrances up onto Mounts Road works all by itself. As we took over and we signed a contract on it, and frankly, prior to it, we looked at, oh, well, how can we improve this? And we looked at some land plan improvements. As soon as we put it on the contract, and I'm taking longer than I ever thought I would. So if I'm taking too long, tell me, and I'll
No, this
pass
is
up.
important.
But I think that's why we're here, because we wanted to let you understand how we got to where we are today with an application before Planning Commission on Thursday. So once we signed the deal, the end of June, we already had ideas of how to change some of the access points and whatnot internally. Then we met with the township, and we met with the township. Township was very clear in initial meetings that they didn't want this project. Township told us. We met with their zoning officer, Alex Kramer, and then we met with Brent Centers, their administrator, and he was very clear, day one, we don't want this project. And the second question was, if we had to go ahead with the project, because there was a lawsuit settlement, and at that time, the township was under the understanding that this did have sewer and did have the plan approval. Since that is the case, then we're going to work with you, but we prefer not to have the project. So we worked with the township from the end of sometime, I think our first meeting might have been it was actually before we signed, because we knew we were ready to sign it, so it was in June. I think it was early June. So we met with the township, and we discussed the project, discussed the pluses and minuses, discussed what the township, if the project goes ahead, I always use that word if it goes ahead, things they would like to see done. And the primary thing was better traffic access. Mounts Road, anybody that's driven that, it's a fairly narrow local road, has very little traffic on it, but if you're driving that road and there were to be a concrete truck coming the other way, your adrenaline would go up and you'd move as far over as you can and hope that he passed you and didn't hit you. So now they've since done some widening of it, so it's a little bit better, but that's a problem.
Are you making the argument that infrastructure is not there to support a development like this?
The infrastructure is difficult, which is why the court settlement said you had to contribute to get Mounts Road improved. So yeah, we agree. Mounts Road needs to be improved. So in working with the township, one of the requests was, hey, see if you can work hard and get an access out to Foster's Mainville Road. So we've spent months on that. We've worked with two different property owners, and the first property owner, and we did design work. We did a lot of work on that, and ultimately we were unsuccessful because the owner felt that we had no other option, and so they took a price of ground that was here and multiplied it and said, well, hey, we'll work with you, but here's the price we want. So we've worked with another property owner since, which we now have on the contract, that gets us out to Foster's Mainville Road. It goes through property that can be sewered gravity-wise with the sewer from our project, but which it would need a modification. But it would give us the access out to Foster's Mainville Road that if the project goes ahead, the township would prefer, we would prefer. There'd be some sewer modification, limited. The lots on that property would be a minimum acre size and some larger, but they'd be minimum acre size. So we also, to help the traffic, have put together a contract on about 13 acres of the Hildebrandt property that is between the Wellington Estates, which is to the west of this property, and there's a tap street called Westmuth. And it's probably about 1,000 foot from our tap street. Greg, can you just point that out on there? The tap street that shows on this plan, this is the old plan, is there. The Westmuth in Wellington is about 1,000 feet away. We've put that property on the contract from Hildebrandt so that we can connect that and avoid virtually all traffic going up to the north part of Mounts Road, which is the poor part from a traffic standpoint. So those are the reasons why we would be looking for a sewer modification of the boundary so that we can accommodate the traffic and the best solutions for traffic on the project.
Now, is that, when you say you've got the properties under contract, does that mean that you've got an easement for those roadways, or you're buying the entire property that the roadways go
We're,
over?
on the Hildebrand, we're buying 13 acres.
Okay, and the one to the south, what are you doing
We're
there?
buying, he owns about 46 acres. We'd be buying about 22 of those.
And is your contract contingent, or is it important in order to do those road improvements, that those areas also be sewered?
The economics are, you have, you can't put a road in of that type, and then we get into the economics of the entire project.
But I just want to see if I understand this. The point that you're making is, you've got a good standalone project with, you believe has sewers, has grandfathered in sewers, you can do that, you don't need to do these other road things, but because of Hamilton Township's request, you're trying to accommodate their interest, and in order to do that, you're just trying to get these other road accesses, and to make that worthy of your expenditure of the amount of money to put in that road, you want to be able to develop some areas around it with sewers. That's basically it.
Limited area, and the other thing we're doing with the township, that on this plan, you can see a center spine. It's a parkway. And the goal there was, let's get a central spine that goes all the way out to Forces Mainville, has no homes on it, has no driveways. It's a parkway. It's going to have a hiker.
Right. You want to see, this whole area is going to develop.
We want to see the best possible project that can happen here.
Project meaning there's 400 acres that's going to be developed.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, eventually, yes. As soon as we modify it, yes.
If, and again, this is up to you as the commissioners to look after the interests of the entire county and work with the township. We believe that if there's a project already approved here and there's sewer here, that all the parties to that lawsuit have the right to amend that and change the plan. Also, if it's an improvement, that you could expand the boundary for particular reasons that don't apply to any of the properties.
So you think that even though there's a settlement, all parties have the option to change the settlement, is what you just said?
What our attorney has advised us is that if everybody was in agreement in this room today, if the township is here, if the trustees were here, everybody that signed that agreement, Planning Commission and yourselves, and we as the successor, all said, well, let's go to, and we agreed on something different, that we really should go back to the court and say to the court, hey, we're going to change these things.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Now,
but
whether that's
I just wanted to understand because you kind of opened this up, Ken, to other properties and other things getting into the sewer area that are not stipulated in this agreement, as I understand it. But all we're really trying to figure out now is what advice we give to the head of our wastewater, sanitary water people for the purposes of a meeting on Thursday. And I think I understand better about your interest and what you're suggesting. And I also, this is the first time I've seen, I mean, we were told about this contract last week and had a lot of questions. Now I've seen it, and I'm not completely clear exactly what it means or how it's to be interpreted. And your lawyer isn't here today with you.
No.
But there will be a day when I'm suspicious that might happen.
We hope not.
Yeah. So I think, from my standpoint, unless, Bernie, you want to speak, I think I understand everything I need to do or think about in order to give the, Chris instructions, with the exception that obviously the people from Hamilton Township are here, and I certainly don't want to leave them out of this conversation.
Yeah, no, well, I want to be perfectly clear with you from my standpoint. This is almost an easy decision for me versus it was very tough when we had a whole family of not necessarily wealthy folks that came in, that this was their family property and they had all inherited it, and they asked, can't we do this, can't we do this? And they asked a couple of times, correct, Bruce? That they came in. And we said, absolutely not. You are outside this line. We're sorry. We would be doing the exact same things we were doing. If roles were reversed, we'd be fighting just like you are. But if we have to look at the 30,000-foot level, what's good for the county, what's good for Hamilton Township, because honestly, I think Hamilton Township, through their density over the years, has screwed it up in so many ways. That their density was way out of whack. And again, I don't mince words. I mean, I speak the truth, you know, so I'm telling you, that's my opinion.
As opposed to the rest of us up here.
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you, I can only speak for myself, and Township can respond to that if they want, but they screwed it up on allowing so much density. If you're saying, because again, you guys are good developers, you're good people, you're trying to look holistically, if we could do this, and we're starting here, it would be great if we could incorporate these things here. I'm telling you, I will go to the mat fighting that your best case scenario, and I don't even think it's legit, because as I read this, I agree with our counsel, it says you don't have sewer access here. Your best case scenario is you have this Stotler 2 property that has a special exemption due to a settlement from 2005 is your best case. If you're saying, let's modify the sewer improvement area at all, absolutely not, in my opinion. And we, not a previous board, this board, with these two colleagues of mine, have said no on previous occasions to other actual, not developers, actual families that have come in owning that property.
Very true, though these circumstances are very different. And, you know, I think notwithstanding the interest you all have in adjusting the plan that you put forward, and that the township has an interest in adjusting the plan that you put forward, if under the conditions you have the right to develop the property. To me, the only question here today is whether or not we think you have the right to develop the property. And I've not yet been convinced that you do not have the right to develop the property. The judge, as I understand it, was, you know, critical of the political subdivision at the time and RPC and the way they were interpreting the law. And I just don't see, and, you know, so then through the settlement agreement, granted this right, and because there was a wrong happen, and I just don't think that 36 months trumps that right to develop this property. At some point, parties will have to determine whether or not it's appropriate to deviate from that agreement. And I certainly wouldn't cut off my nose to spite my face if through a secondary negotiated settlement, all parties can be satisfied and a better product to meet the needs of all parties is achieved. But that, to me, is very much a secondary issue, because I just am not convinced that you've lost, the
Property owner.
property owner has lost the right to develop the property because of this 36-month language in the settlement. That's where I am, is you know, I take that right seriously, and I, so.
Yeah, and that's why I think to add on to this, first off, this board is one of the most collegial bodies I've ever been involved with. They're smart people. They all sincerely state their positions. We don't hide our stuff. I've seen other jurisdictions around that are much more cantankerous than this body here. So the fact that I may end up disagreeing with Mr. Young on this matter does not mean that I don't respect him. And of course, we all speak the truth, and some of us are more blunt than others. And I do not at this point see that the sewers are not grandfathered in for this area right now. I'm not expressing an absolute opinion on that. I want to hear from other people. I do think that there's a bigger ask that's more difficult if we open this up so that then impacts provision of lots of other surrounding territories to get sewers with the types of things that it's true that we voted against, and we've very much tried to accommodate Hamilton Township's position on this. So, having said all of that, I'd kind of like to hear from the township, and maybe Mr. Burning, if you'd like to speak.
Just
Okay,
one other,
I'm sorry.
just
I don't wanna
one,
quash you.
one response. We will not bring anything before you. Now, the property owner has property rights, so that lawsuit and what's effective today, what isn't, has to be decided. And they have interest in that, obviously, we have interest in that. But ultimately, if this project, and just call it the whole project here, which might include the other properties, we would not come before you for any expansion of a sewer district without the township saying, we would like to do that. Because if this is going to happen, if X is going to happen, we'd like to see Y and Z happen with it. If the township was not on board with that, we will not ask you to do it. It won't happen. So with that, yeah, any questions of Greg? Greg?
Anything to add, Greg?
Well, Ken had told me before the meeting that he only had 3 minutes and I had 8. So I only get 1 minute now. But thanks for having us here, Commissioner Young, Grossman and Jones. Every time I'm in Warren County, it's honest and it's fair and and you tell us how it is. Same with the township. The township has been very honest and upfront with us. And been great to deal with. So it's great to work in Warren County as a developer. We appreciate that. Just to add just a little bit on Ken and I, we do quality developments together. We joined up a couple years ago, and we've been working quite diligently on a lot of projects. This project in particular, we felt we could improve already a workable plan. We've added some things to the plan I just want to add, and it'll be a longer conversation in the RPC where I can pitch it a little more, but this plan coming off of Foster's Mainville with this parkway, and then another connection, secondary connection to Westmeath gives a great traffic pattern through the community. We've added community centers, pools, dog parks, playgrounds that were not in the previous plan. So we feel we've improved it with different product types, product levels, and we're just really excited about this plan to come up. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Centers, Mr. Yoder?
Thank you. Brent Centers, Hamilton Township Administrator. I won't be redundant. I would agree with largely everything Mr. Campbell said. They do quality work, all of that. We are adamantly opposed to this development for growth reasons.
What did you just say again? Can you repeat that?
We're opposed to this development.
You said adamantly opposed.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
You know, again, not to be redundant, but we have taxing.
Well, it's not that
roads off.
you're being redundant. You're speaking on behalf of the township. It's important for you to say
Okay,
you're
well-
not being redundant. You tell us what the township thinks right now.
The township thinks that Mr. McGarry's interpretation of this settlement agreement is accurate. The way you're reading it is accurate, and that's how we believe as well.
For the record, just say what you can't point at me. It's just, you're saying I'm correct, Dave Young?
I'm sure he
Right?
loves to hear that.
Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. We believe that
what you're
this
saying?
development is not granted
Okay.
from the 2005 agreement.
And that's the position, you're representing the 3 trustees who are unanimous in what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, thank you.
Our Little Miami School District's already largely overcrowded. This would put, about 180 students based on measurements of 371 homes, along with all the additional traffic on roads and bridges that are already taxed. We just don't believe it's in the general public health and welfare of our community, and nor do we agree that it's even granted from the 2005 agreement. And our legal counsel's here to speak on our behalf legally. And then, of course, this touches Mainville, and the mayor of Mainville and their legal counsel's here as well, if you would like to hear their opinion, which I believe.
What about this potential expansion of the settlement? Because again, we got to bifurcate. We have a settlement property that's subject to this 2005 settlement, and now the developer is saying, looking big picture, I can make it better if we include these other properties and run sewers to those. And that, I think he put it in your court, what would the township think to that?
The township would need a legal opinion that would state that that wouldn't open other surrounding jurisdiction or other surrounding parcels to the sewer as well. If it was only for this parcel, and if and only if it was legally required to do this development, we would want the better development with the better traffic flow down onto Foster's Mainville.
So let me see if I think I understand what you just said. And I thought I understood this when Mr. Campbell was presenting it. So if it were the decision of this board that the sewer, the fact that they get sewer for this is grandfathered in still, that the 36-month was not a mandatory provision where they had to do it within 36 months, but that they were automatically allowed to do that specific development within 36 months, regardless of the grandfathering of the sewer. And I'm not sure how this should be interpreted yet, okay? But what your position is, as I understand it, is that if in fact there's gonna be sewers to this area, and if in fact a development kind of like this goes on, then you would like other improvements to surrounding roads, and that to make them, if it required sewers, you're okay with it as long as it doesn't jeopardize the position that other people can somehow piggyback onto this and opening up the floodgates to sewers in lots of other areas that are nearby.
Yes, sir, that's
kinda
township's
summarize it?
opinion. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, also, if that 2005 is legally binding, there's other provisions that we have concern with that Mr. Yoder can speak
Okay,
to.
we don't need to deal with that today, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think we do.
Okay, good, then I certainly don't want to cut you off then.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe I will speak just a little. I debated what I say or not.
Let's identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, yeah. Ben Yoder, Bricker and Eckler, Hamilton Township's Law Director. I debated what to say because frankly, your advice should be coming from your county prosecutor, that's yours. I'd note the township itself wasn't actually a party to the 2005 settlement agreement. I think from a question you asked earlier, it's what's the township's position on, if the county commissioners decide that that settlement agreement is still in force. I think that our first position would be to presumably file a motion to intervene in the case and appeal that. I think the township is adamantly opposed to it, and I do genuinely agree with your county prosecutor that it's not in force anymore. You've got the first provision that obviously deals with the 36 months in a sunset provision, but then after that, I think Commissioner Jones, what you're getting into is kind of the concept of grandfathering. Well, property is just not grandfathered for the sake of grandfathering forever. That's the whole concept and principle of zoning, planning, et cetera, et cetera. Those are called vested rights. If you look at that, the settlement agreement, it references the earlier the modification of the sewer district there. In it, it says that there are some properties that are adjoining to the sewer district that have vested to the extent that they did so in May of 2005. The problem with it, though, is that it says it's only if they both detrimentally relied on it, and Mr. McGarry covered that, and the property owner or the developer have made improvements to the property. There's not been any improvements to the properties whatsoever. So the township's legal position, whether now or before a court of law, is going to be, we think that that settlement agreement does not apply. I think it's also important, and that's what Mr. Centers was just covering, is to the extent that nonetheless, though, it does apply, there's real problems with that settlement agreement. There's no provision in there that talks about severance. So we don't know what a court will do with that, but nonetheless, there's provisions in there like impact fees. What are we going to do about that? I think we're all fairly well aware of Hamilton Township's other case dealing with that. Senior housing, I've got some concerns with the whole empty nester concept. I'd love to be able to regulate and say, oh yeah, it's not going to be any new students or anything like that. But zoning law regulates the use, not the user. I've never found a way, quite frankly, to be able to dictate that there's never going to be kids that are going to the schools on account of that. So I don't think that that provision's going to withstand scrutiny. Similar with building materials, there's going to be a problem with that. And then cluster zoning. The township zoning is different now as well. So how is a court, whenever we get to whatever suit we're to get to, going to interpret without a severability provision whether that agreement stands up, whether it goes away or what? So those are real issues that we have with it. I think the question somewhat before you, whether it's for now or and maybe you just punt and say, you tell Mr. Broush, say, you got to get sanitary one way or another, and we'll punt. Eventually, that decision is going to come up, and we're going to have to talk about that. I think the question is, in part, are they legally entitled to sewer or not now? You know the township's position. Then the question will come up is, okay, if we're not legally required, should we nonetheless expand it if there's a modification that occur, whether it's just for this property or the greater project as well. That then will get you into kind of the whole purpose for what a county sewer district is about. In that 2005 settlement agreement, it references the enabling statute that's involved here. It's 6117B. You are allowed to have a sewer district or expand it whenever it's in the interests of preserving and protecting the public welfare and health of the community. I think whether it's you hear from Brent Centers, from Mayor Beebe on Thursday in front of RPC with the neighbors that come forward, they're going to say extending the sewer is not preserving or protecting the public's health and welfare. So that's what our position will be now, whether it's in a lawsuit later. But yeah, I mean, the township is fundamentally opposed to expanding sewer. Now, to the extent, and same to your point, Mr. Campbell and his crew are great people. We have no problems with them whatsoever. If we're legally required to comply with whatever we're required to do, of course, we're going to do that, and we'll work within our confines to do that as best as possible.
So are you saying that you have a lawsuit, or there is something, so if the majority of this board were determined that we're going to permit sewers in this area, you think that that is a challengeable decision in the court?
I think it may be under two paths, and I'm admittedly no sanitary sewer expert, but I do think that there is a course to challenge a decision of the county commissioners to approve an expansion of a sewer district. Alternatively.
But actually, we're talking about a specific settlement agreement where I think that this board, if it does approve this, is going to want to do it within the structure of that and the fact that it's the concept of it being grandfathered.
Sure.
So that's my question to you is, if this board decides that this sewer permission was grandfathered and they have a right to proceed with that, you're saying that you can all of a sudden intervene in this settlement agreement and
I think we
challenge
sure
it?
as heck would try. Yeah, I mean, procedurally, what we would do, which kind of is counterintuitive to what you're
Well,
saying.
it's kind of novel, but okay. I
Well,
get you.
it's a motion for leave to intervene in the lawsuit, of which we weren't prior party to, but nonetheless, that fundamentally affects us, which is the exact point that you all are making and acknowledging is sewer fundamentally affects us. So I think you can't have your cake and eat it too, in that we're either affected, and we ought to be allowed to give input to the court on the meaning of that, or we don't.
Yeah, and again, we've got to wrap this up. We've got a bunch of elected officials out there, but you actually triggered one thing, and Bruce, that's something else to think about, is the original intent of this settlement agreement. Ben's exactly right. We can't go in and regulate empty nesters. We can't normally do that. But what we did do is we were dealing with a party that had a settlement, and there was a personal lawsuit against a commissioner. There were all sorts of extenuating circumstances on this settlement with this property owner, this developer, and we came to this agreement. And it was only dealing with that developer who had this personal claim against the commissioner, all this other stuff going on, and they actually agreed. We're going to limit it this, that we're going to put our settlement document where our mouth is and say, we're only going to give you 140, we're going to do 140 empty nesters here. That's when this whole settlement, and it was with them, and they had to comply within 36 months because this was not going on forever.
It was a settlement agreement, so I disagree with Ben on that. However, I would like to hear Ben elaborate, if you'd give him just 1 minute, on the separate issue of adding additional properties, which would necessitate a modification of the sewer improvement area. He's outlined what I told you 2 weeks ago about what that standard is, and if you decide to modify that boundary, is Hamilton Township willing to challenge you on that?
Correct, and I think the answer to that, I don't know for sure. I mean, this is the type of thing that executive sessions are built for, and you end up going back and forth on the balancing act of, do you want to plug your nose or not? And I suspect that the answer will be a hard line that, yes, respectfully, should we have to, we will challenge your decision to modify the sewer district.
I think we'd only modify the sewer district if you all were in agreement to modify the sewer district.
I would like you to have that opinion, that's great.
Well, but what the issue is whether or not, in my view, whether or not this settlement agreement allows them
Yep.
to develop in the way that it was laid out, including accessing the sewer. I
Exactly.
mean,
Right, which is
so-
why I said that's their best case. On this 171 acres of Stotler 2, either it has it or it doesn't. That's an open
Bingo.
question, subject to interpretation. But they're saying the project would be better to include these other parcels.
Right, and
which
I-
our council's sitting here saying absolutely dead nuts, you would have to modify, we would have to modify the sewer
I am
district.
not, I don't disagree that the interpretation around it's a better project would happen that, you know, in taking in these other properties. But I don't feel compelled to change to agree to change the boundary, because I don't think I'm required to do that. The question that we have, in my view, is whether or not we're required to provide sewer in this way under these circumstances. And if I would only be compelled to then modify it from this way, if all of the parties were satisfied with the solution. I heard Brent say, you know, that it doesn't open this up or that up or whatever. That would be the only reason why I would agree to that. And so, but I just view that as a secondary issue.
I think you're both right, but that's, I mean, procedurally, that's exactly what's before you, is do you think that you've got?
But in 30 days, it's going to be before you, because that other property is coming to planning next month. So Mr. Brouse will be here in 30 more days to ask you the same
And so
question.
the issue, though, is that property is outside of the territory. It just happens to have a utility easement on it for the purposes of
Which is why in
allowing
the
this
first 30
property-
seconds, I actually tried to tell the developer, your best case, in my humble opinion, is you get this with the sewers. If you start talking about these other properties, that's a whole different ballgame.
And that's exactly right, David, exactly right. I'm sorry, you know,
Say that again for him.
exactly right.
Is your
I know
mic
he wants to-
working too?
But the only reason why we're talking about that is because and this is why I kept on repeating what everybody was saying here to make sure I understood it. And I did that with you, and I did it with Mr. Centers, and I've done it with the person who's thinking about developing it with the option to do it. Because all of this cascades into something else once a determination is made, which I think is a rather novel idea that you could challenge us on saying this is grandfathered in. But regardless of that, if I understood it, if we decide that this gets sewers, a majority of us decide that, then all of a sudden, the township's position flips all over the place. Because then all of a sudden it wants some other things that are happening that could require sewers and some other property. And then they're asking the question, which none of us know the answer to, which is, if that happens, does that open up the floodgates?
Which is the exact reason why I think what Commissioner Young said is exactly true, which is best case scenario, after we object, at least attempt to, should a court say, yes, the county's legally required to do them, I think the township will ultimately end on, okay, we will do that, but that is it.
Well, since when? But I don't even think we get to the point of the court, of us being legally required to do anything.
That's the fundamental question that's
Well, no,
before
it's
you.
not really, because I am not going to act because a court forces me to act, like there's some writ or something like that going on here. I'm going to act based upon what I believe is the best interpretation of these agreements, and I'll get your advice, and I'll get some other lawyer's advice, like Joe Trouth or whoever's not here today, and any other lawyer that's representing any other property owner, which I think there's somebody, a property owner that still owns this and maybe has a lawyer too. So we're probably gonna hear from a lot of lawyers. But,
Sorry.
and I do love lawyers, but I would never want to be married to one. Any event, the fact of the matter is that we don't have to make any of these decisions today, even though Bruce is absolutely right. We know it's coming at us.
Correct.
Okay,
You
fair-
could just punt.
Fair enough. And Mayor, you showed up. I mean, want to be respectful of you if you've got anything? 30 seconds. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm Mayor Bob Beebe, Village of Mainville. It's an honor to stand before you here. I won't talk about legalities at all. I'll just kind of talk about the impact that it would have on one of the quietest neighborhoods in Mainville, which is Wellington Estates. If you have the boulevard going onto Mounts Road, as well as the other exit going out Westmouth, they both dump onto Mounts Road, which is one of the quietest. It's actually the main street through Wellington Estates. Families walk in the evenings, kids play in the street. With that happening, potentially hundreds of vehicles coming through there is going to have a negative impact. The residents are very upset about this development, so that's pretty much all I'll say about it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very good. So my gauge doing this for a while is the pleasure of the board is to do nothing at this point of say, Mr. Broush, we're instructing you to not give an opinion on if sewers are available, that the RPC will do whatever they're going to do with a contingency on sewer availability. Is that Bruce?
Yes.
Chris, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep, that's fine.
It's fine, that's acceptable, yeah.
There you go.
That is the majority of the board. That is not my position. I want to be clear on that. That's the majority of the board, so we will take no position on this.
Very good.
Thank you all for being here,
Appreciate it.
especially apologies for the delay. Hearing no other business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Yes.